Brother Meng, I often think about what happened that year in the realm of the bridge ruins, said Subai with a laugh, looking over at Meng Hao. The great black dragon tribe slaughtered its bandit tribe even as he spoke. Meng Hao chuckled, his voice calm as the breeze. Oh, that was just a fluke. Brother Su, you single-handedly stopped that demon spirit from moving. I truly admire you. Intense combat rumbled from either side. The Black Dragon tribe was going all out in their massacre, as was the Crow Divinity tribe. They had no desire to come second and cause their totemic sacred ancient to lose face. The nascent soul cultivators especially understood that this battlefield bet was a foreshadowing of an alliance and would decide who held dominance. They used the full power of their cultivation bases to seize the alliance's lead position. Both sides attacked with gusto on this battlefield gambling hall. The bandit tribes let out grievous cries, forced to fight and capable of nothing but defeat. Meng Hao's 150,000 neo-demons obfuscated the sky. The Crow Divinity tribe took the lead. Moments later, the Black Dragon tribe's totemic sacred ancient and the bandit tribe's sacred ancients appeared, and the Crow Divinity tribe fell behind. Then 3 beams of colorful light suddenly appeared, 3 beams not seen in the Sea Demon tribe battle. 3 totemic sacred ancients appeared, ones Meng Hao had absorbed with the 8-branch alliance. The intensity of slaughter ratcheted up instantly. Brother Meng, said Subai, his voice cool, you and your Crow Divinity tribe fought your way down from the north. I've heard many stories, but this last leg will be the most difficult. In the end, all the most powerful tribes will gather. Whether they want to or not, those without demon spirits will become bandit tribes. They will attempt to snatch a demon spirit and rob other tribes, resources, slaughtering their way into being noticed by the Heavenly Court Alliance or great tribes with resources for surviving in the Black Lands. Any would become auxiliary tribes to survive. The fighting reached a critical juncture. The Crow Divinity tribe gained an even greater lead, and the Great Black Dragon tribe fell clearly behind. The only option is to form an alliance, continued Subai. The Crow Divinity and Black Dragon tribes need to find the Heavenly Wind tribe for a 3-tribe alliance. If we push forward together after reaching the Black Lands, our tribes can continue forever. That's the only way to ensure we not only get to the Black Lands but stay there safely. I'm sure you understand, Brother Meng. I don't really need to bring it up. Booming sounds erupted from the Crow Divinity direction. By now, 80% of the enemy were dead, the remainder scattered and fleeing. The entire bandit tribe would be exterminated soon. The Great Black Dragon tribe had destroyed about 50% of their bandit tribe, clearly going slower. Subai frowned, inwardly shocked. His respect for the Crow Divinity tribe grew. Meng Hao mulled over what Subai had said, then cleared his throat and looked deeply at the Black Dragon tribe. The members' eyes turned red. They felt ashamed, as if great pressure had been put onto them. All instantly unraveled the black cords tied around their wrists, lifted their heads to the sky, and roared. Their cultivation bases exploded up by nearly 50%. They battled the fleeing bandit tribe with explosive madness. The Black Dragon tribe's rampage suddenly reversed their situation. Casualties among the bandit tribe soared. The surviving members were filled with despair and terror, retreating in chaos. Kill them, roared the Black Dragon tribe as they continued the massacre. The Crow Divinity tribe also advanced. After half an incense stick's time, both tribes completed the slaughter simultaneously. Still burning with killing intent, they returned to stand behind Subai and Meng Hao. The 2 tribes faced off. Neither seemed willing to give in. Subai took a deep breath, shocked inside. He knew the Black Dragon tribe had only secured a draw by unsealing the ropes. He believed if they had opened the seal at the battle's start, the Crow Divinity tribe would not have matched them. But then he glanced at the Neo-Demon hordes. The Crow Divinity horde was no longer 150,000. It was larger by 20,000. He gasped, his heart trembled, he breathed heavily. No wonder the rumors say the Crow Divinity tribe feeds off of battle. Every battle makes them stronger. And their most powerful totemic sacred ancient, Meng Hao, didn't even make a move. This Crow Divinity tribe is far more powerful than I imagined. Meng Hao had already thought deeply about what happened after the Black Dragon tribe removed the seals, growing to admire them even more. Subai's hearty laughter echoed. With genuine sincerity he looked at Meng Hao and said, Brother Meng, let's form an alliance. What do you say? I say yes, replied Meng Hao without hesitation. The alliance's benefits far outweighed the drawbacks. Meng Hao knew that after reaching the Black Lands, the Crow Divinity tribe could merge with the Church of the Golden Light and he would part ways with them. Adding another ally would only provide further safety for the Crow divinity tribe. "Men prepare a sacrifice and blood oath," cried Subai. For the Black Dragon tribe, an alliance was very important. The elders and priests approached, as did the Great Father, Subai himself. All Crow divinity nascent soul cultivators approached Meng Hao. The sacrifice was made, and an oath sworn by smearing blood on lips. An alliance formed like those in Western desert legends. The Neo-Demon ancestors and totemic sacred ancients swore oaths, and a bilateral alliance was formed with no primary or secondary party. The next day was rest and reorganization. The two parties redistributed resources evenly. Meng Hao could control the 70,000-strong Neo-Demon horde of the Black Dragon tribe. When battle came, Meng Hao's Neo-Demon horde would number 240,000. A black dragon and a battleship shot through the sky toward the south. The final leg would take 3 months. Those 3 months would be the most difficult military campaign the Black Dragon tribe and Crow Divinity tribe had ever carried out. In the first month, they went into battle 7 times against 9 different tribes. Every 3 to 5 days, they ran into bandit tribes. Such battle frequency was unheard of. Without their two-tribe alliance, they would have suffered significant losses, perhaps more than half. The Crow Divinity tribe might have fared better due to Neo-Demons, but the Black Dragon tribe would have found it much more difficult. With their alliance, the month of campaigning left them exhausted but prevented significant losses. 3 occasions had the course of battle changed because of Meng Hao's Neo-Demons, now including the Black Dragon tribe's horde. The fearsome power he wielded caused Black Dragon members to be filled with shock and excitement. Even Subai was astonished. He had never heard of any Dragoneer who could do what Meng Hao did. During that first month, despite both tribes sustaining losses, Meng Hao grew his Neo-Demon horde larger. The Black Dragon tribe cooperated by not attacking enemy Neo-Demons. In the end, Meng Hao's horde reached 300,000. When such a vast number of Neo-Demons appeared, heaven was shaken and earth trembled. In the second month, they experienced more than 20 battles. On 2 occasions, they encountered bandit tribe alliances. Faced against Meng Hao's terrifying Neo-Demon horde, the bandit tribes were crushed like dried weeds. By month's end, Meng Hao's horde numbered a shocking 400,000. 400,000 Neo-Demons had never been seen or heard of in the Western Desert. Even a great tribe with a spirit-severing patriarch could never have such a horde. It was impossible for a Dragoneer to brand so many. The food to sustain them was enough to bankrupt a great tribe. With 400,000 Neo-Demons, battles became simple. During the last month, they encountered virtually no hostile cultivators. They sped unimpeded toward the Black Lands. It seemed there were no repercussions for exterminating the Sea Demon tribe. Nonetheless, Meng Hao couldn't shake the feeling of impending crisis. Even Subai frowned continuously. Something didn't seem right. The other nascent soul cultivators had similar reactions. At month's end, the Black Dragon tribe and Crow Divinity tribe finally laid eyes on the Black Lands. Instantly, the faces of Meng Hao, Subai, and all their clan members became extremely unsightly. This chapter was sponsored by Danius Glebus, Benjamin Jacobson, Pavlov Alexei, and Dat Du. Chapter 510, The Last Battle. The Black Lands was like a plateau, shoved high into the sky by geological forces. The Western Desert lay far below. This was Meng Hao's first time seeing the border between the Black Lands and Western Desert. Years ago, he had left the Black Lands via ancient portal to the Western Desert North region, not through this area. Seeing the lay of the land caused Meng Hao's eyes to widen. Now he finally understood why the Black Lands was the only place to escape the Western Desert apocalypse. The Western Desert South region was much higher than the northern parts. The West, North, and East regions had been completely submerged into a violet sea smelling of salt. Here in the South, rivers had not yet formed. All falling rain continued to flow toward the north. The Black Lands were even higher, jutting thousands of meters into the sky cliff-like, as if formed by earthquake. Endless mountain ranges existed along the Black Land's edge, seeming to connect to the sky itself, preventing the violet tempest and any living thing from entering. These mountains made the Black Land's elevation shocking. They prevented the violet sea spread, and there was only one way in. Blackgate Fort, 80,000 meters wide in the middle of all the mountains. It stood tall, straight, enormous. All cultivators who saw it would gasp. Blackgate Fort was the color of night with its gates shut tight. Along its 80,000-meter width stretched a battlement lined with tens of thousands of cultivators chatting and laughing, looking out occasionally and pointing down. What caused Meng Hao's pupils to constrict was that the violet rain he'd grown accustomed to over the years did not fall on Blackgate Fort. Outside, it poured down, but not a drop fell on it. Outside Blackgate Fort, land was filled with fog and mist, hazy. Meng Hao hadn't caught a glimpse of the sun in years. Yet within Blackgate Fort, a majestic blue sky was visible, even fluffy white clouds. Blackgate Fort was a division between two different worlds. Between Blackgate Fort and their two tribes, more than 20 bandit tribes were positioned in formation across the land, looking at the Crow Divinity and Black Dragon tribes with avarice, ridicule, and killing intent. 20 bandit tribes with 200,000 cultivators and 400,000 neodemons, positioned to prevent anyone from entering the Black Lands. Within their eyes, Meng Hao could see greed, savagery, and a message. If we can't get in, you can forget about going in. If we die, you die with us. Meng Hao stood silently. Then he noticed something in front of the 20 tribes. Tens of thousands of bamboo poles, swaying slightly, all covered with dried black blood. Atop each pole was a head, an entire tribe, including old people and children. Further up was an enormous neodemon head, obviously this tribe's totemic sacred ancient. All dead. This was the Heavenly Wind tribe. Closer to Meng Hao and Su Bai were more than 20,000 bare bamboo poles stuck into the ground. Their significance was obvious. They were there for the heads of the Crow Divinity and Black Dragon tribes. The battlefield was deathly silent. No one spoke. Only the soft whimpering of wind could be heard. Hundreds of thousands began to breathe heavily, their killing intent rising into the sky. Blackgate Fort was not easy to enter. Another sound came from the tall battlement on the Black Lands. Tens of thousands watched the proceedings as if it were a play. To the people atop the battlement, the Crow Divinity tribe, Black Dragon tribe, and more than 20 bandit tribes were nothing more than actors on a stage performing for their enjoyment. Some were members of the Heavenly Court Alliance. Others were members of Western Desert great sects with spirit-severing patriarchs. Naturally, they could stand apart and watch the life or death game playing out below. Joe Dekun was on the battlement, fists clenched, expression sorrowful. There was nothing he could do. He could only watch Meng Hao in silence. Standing next to Joe Dekun was the young man from the Cloud Sky tribe who had appeared to Meng Hao in illusory form. He sighed as he looked over the lands below, and Meng Hao and the Crow Divinity tribe. "What a pity," he said, shaking his head. On another section of the battlement stood a woman who was surrounded by powerful experts. Clearly, she occupied a very high position. This was none other than the woman who by chance had met Meng Hao in the Black Lands and had been frightened away by him. This was a chosen of the great demon butterfly tribe, one of the three forces that made up the Heavenly Court Alliance. Goddess Dual Lan. 1. We met Dual Lan in chapter 323. She encountered Meng Hao and called him Demon Lord. She was currently frowning as she looked over the lands below. Her gaze eventually came to fall on Meng Hao. "Dual Lan, why are you frowning? Don't tell me this person offended you." The gentle voice came from a young man standing next to her. He was big and tall, with handsome features and long hair. With his long, spotless white robe and charming smile, he was the spitting image of a chosen. He was surrounded by 3 old men who had profound cultivation bases. Clearly, this young man had an illustrious status. This was the chosen from the great Heavenly Pursuit tribe, another of the leaders of the Heavenly Court Alliance, Zhang Wenzu. "Oh, nothing," replied Duo Lan coolly. "He just seems familiar. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before but can't seem to remember where." Zhang Wenzu smiled as he stood there next to Duo Lan, looking at Meng Hao. "A trifling insect," he said, looking back at Duo Lan with a brilliant smile. "If you can't remember, there's no need to even think about it. It's meaningless." Duo Lan didn't seem to be used to him being so close to her. Without thinking about, she took a few steps back. What she didn't notice was off in the distance in the crowd on the battlement. Someone's gaze shifted from her to Zhang Wenzu. That person's gaze was filled with hatred. Hatred quickly vanished without a trace. The gaze belonged to none other than former Black Land's Dao child Luo Chang. He stood there in the crowds, his expression the same as ever but inwardly gnashing his teeth. His former sect had become an auxiliary branch of the Heavenly Court Alliance, and he had lost his former position. Although he was of the core formation stage, such a cultivation base was nothing outstanding. 2. Luo Chang is the guy that Meng Hao aka Fang Mu slashed with the wooden time sword by the ancient Dao geyser in chapter 269. Later, When he first arrived in the Black Lands, Meng Hao aka the Demon Lord poisoned Luo Chang in Chapter 325. Later, he reappeared leading a force from the Black Palace against Holy Snow City in Chapter 372. He escaped with his life, while Meng Hao fought the spirit-severing cultivator. "Slut," he thought to himself, "and you damnable Zhang Wenzu, you dare to touch the woman I've taken a liking to, one of those days I'll see you dead." It was at this point that suddenly he stared in stupefaction out at the lands below. He rubbed his eyes vigorously as he looked at Meng Hao. Then he began to pant. It's him, how is it possible?" Meanwhile, back in the Black Lands, in the area controlled by the Heavenly Court Alliance, was a completely unremarkable sect. Its name was Church of the Golden Light. Currently, the Church of the Golden Light had around 7 or 8,000 disciples. All of them had excited expressions on their faces as they ran to and fro through midair. A bright glow gradually began to spread out, along with a shocking aura. "A message from Lord Fifth has arrived. The Patriarch has returned. Let's go receive the Patriarch and Lord Fifth. Have faith in the Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When the Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife?" Outside Blackgate Fort, Meng Hao and Su Bai stood amidst deathly silence. Meng Hao looked over and slowly said, "The last battle." Su Bai was silent for a moment, then laughed clear and bright, filled with stubbornness. He looked at Meng Hao and nodded. "The last battle. Victory means we enter the Black Lands. The announcement promised entrance for anyone with a demon spirit. There is no need for regrets if we lose. Meng Hao, if I die, will you allow the great Black Dragon tribe to become part of your Crow divinity tribe?" Su Bai's expression was pure sincerity. Meng Hao looked at Su Bai and nodded deeply. "In that case, what need is there to fear death? This is going to be one delightful battle." Laughing heartily, Su Bai leaped off the Black Dragon. A thunderous sound echoed as muscles bulged and his frame grew larger, revealing the shocking power of his physical body. "Black Dragon tribe," he cried, looking back at the members of his tribe. All of them lifted their heads to look back at him. "Remove the seals, fight." The entire Black Dragon tribe responded, "Fight." The members of the Black Dragon tribe followed Su Bai as he charged forward. They untied the black cords tied around their wrists, causing an incredible aura to roar out. All of them instantly began to grow larger. This seal held back the true power of the great Black Dragon tribe's physical body training method. After opening the seal, the tribe members' bodies grew a full head taller. They looked like fierce, black dragons as they shot forward. As for Meng Hao, he took a deep breath. He lifted his right hand up, within which appeared the Devil's Spear. He looked back at the members of the Crow Divinity Tribe and beyond, toward the Western Desert North region. That was the home of the Crow Divinity Tribe. He thought of the Golden Crow and the Great Tree. He thought about his promise to them and about the long road upon which he had led the Crow Divinity Tribe all the way to here. Many images flitted in his mind, eventually transforming into the current moment. This was the last battle. "Fight!" This one word spoken by Meng Hao boomed out like thunder. The members of the Crow Divinity Tribe felt their blood burning with righteous indignation. Killing intent boiled up, flared out. The tribe knew that this was the final moment which would decide the difference between life and death. 400,000 neo-demons filled the sky, emitting heaven-shaking roars. Big Harry was there. By now, he was a level 10 neo-demon. Harry's 2, 3 and the others weren't quite a match for him, but they were intrepid nonetheless. The wild giant could also be seen. Gu La, as a true dragoneer, had been of much assistance to Meng Hao throughout the journey. Right now, his eyes were bright red. 400,000 neo-demons charged roaring into battle. The parrot's shrill squawk suddenly rang out. "Get into formation. Remember, get into formation." Chapter 511, the spell formation is seen again. 20,000 people versus 200,000. This was a battle with an immense disparity. To many onlookers, it seemed nothing more than a crushing. Even though the Black Dragon and Crow Divinity tribes were veterans of hundreds of battles, facing 10 times their numbers made victory nearly impossible. They could only kill as many bandit members as possible before being slain themselves. But the Crow Divinity and Black Dragon tribes had another option. Meng Hao, the totemic sacred ancient of the Crow Divinity tribe, had an amazing ability to control neo-demons. Starting with only 1,000 members, the Crow Divinity tribe had grown to its current strength because Meng Hao's neo-demons became the linchpin in each battle. 400,000 neo-demons, a power that no other tribe could possibly possess, will without a doubt be a deciding factor in this battle. A roar filled the air as slaughter broke out on the battlefield. In the blink of an eye, the Crow Divinity Tribe and Black Dragon Tribe slashed like blades into the alliance of 20 bandit tribes. The sound of fighting rocked heaven and earth. The Crow Divinity Tribe's battle tactics seemed different from previous battles, with staggered positioning as if fighting in a unique formation. The wind whistled and the sky dimmed. Broken patches of clouds drifted to and fro. A great change was occurring in the heavens. The ground quaked and the mountains trembled. The sound of shouting caused the sky to tremble. The violet rain fell down onto a scene of a ruthless slaughter. The great Black Dragon Tribe seemed crazed. More than 10,000 members exploded outward violently. Not a single bandit tribe member could stand against them. As for the members of the Crow Divinity Tribe, their killing intent rose to the heavens. Their eyes were shot with blood. This was the last battle which would decide whether they lived or died. If they didn't live, then what did it matter if they died? Their only chance was to reach Blackgate Fort ahead. Otherwise, their spiritual energy would waste away in the violet rain, and they would wither like mortals. Therefore they exploded out with all the fire their life force could muster. Even dying, they laughed uproariously. Booming sounds erupted as magical techniques exploded outward. Growling roars filled the air. All of it mixed to form a joyous song of battle. No music, only the majestic sound of fighting and rumbling. Subai lifted his head to the sky and laughed heartily as he shot forward through the battlefield. He was unstoppable, spattered with blood, some his own but mostly enemies. His laughter held sadness mixed with stubborn hopefulness. It said, "If I can't survive, I will die in battle." Meng Hao looked over the scene and his heart trembled. The blood in his veins boiled and redness filled his eyes. This was the last battle, and it had his life force burning. What happens in front of Blackgate Fort is like a play. All the people on the battlement are audience members, watching from above. He looked at the 20 tribes of killers, hundreds of thousands of cultivators gathered so thickly you could hardly see their end. They were like tidewaters of extermination, boiling with killing intent as they roared into battle. Violet rain fell down endlessly, spattering onto the bodies of everyone present. It doesn't matter if you're watching or in the play. It's still nothing more than a battle. Killing intent exploded from Meng Hao's eyes. He waved his arm and 400,000 roaring neodemons shot toward the bandit tribes. In total, there were more than 100 dragoneers among the bandit tribes. They floated in midair under heavy protection, using all their power to control their own force of 400,000 neodemons to fight back against Meng Hao's. At this point, the nascent soul cultivators of the 20 bandit tribes flew out. They radiated ruthlessness as they shot toward the Black Dragon and Crow Divinity tribes. They moved at such speed they were mere blurs. As soon as they appeared, they were in the middle of the battle. The sound of slaughter rose with the booms of divine abilities and magical techniques. The nascent soul cultivators of the Crow Divinity and Black Dragon tribes numbered fewer than 30. Compared to the bandit tribes' numbers, they were at a serious disadvantage. However, Meng Hao's neodemon horde was large enough to send powerful neodemons to join the battle. Instantly, they caused havoc on the battlefield. The totemic sacred ancients from the 20 bandit tribes whistled into battle. They were of varied appearances but all emanated shocking auras. As they arrived, the totemic sacred ancients of the Black Dragon tribe and Crow Divinity tribe both appeared. Along with the Outlander beast, they charged to fight back. The battle had just begun, and already it was shocking to the extreme. 4 totemic sacred ancients and 20 nascent soul cultivators suddenly appeared to lock down Meng Hao and Subai. This was especially true of Meng Hao. 3 of the totemic sacred ancients and 7 of the nascent soul cultivators targeted him specifically. They knew who he was and also knew that if they killed him, his neodemon horde would disperse. If that happened, the battle could be won easily. As they closed in on him, Meng Hao's eyes glittered with killing intent. He waved his right hand, and a flicker of lightning could be seen as the soul of the Li clan patriarch suddenly was unleashed by Meng Hao. As soon as the soul emerged, red lightning crackled about with the Li clan patriarch at its center. Boundless lightning shot out in all directions, instantly enveloping everything for hundreds of meters in every direction, creating a lake of lightning. Within the lightning, the 7 nascent soul cultivators intent on killing Meng Hao, as well as the 4 totemic sacred ancients, all trembled violently. This was not ordinary lightning, but tribulation lightning absorbed by the Li clan patriarch as a soul of lightning. Rumbling erupted as Meng Hao's enemy's body shook. Instantly, he transformed into green smoke and a black moon. He shot toward a nearby early nascent soul stage cultivator in the bandit tribes, forces in the blink of an eye. The devil's spear appeared in his hand, and seething devilish mist rolled out, filled with savage faces. Miserable screams echoed out as the devil's spear stabbed through the chest of the early nascent soul stage cultivator. Mist enveloped him, and savage, laughing faces began to consume him. Meng Hao disappeared again. A howl erupted as the 7 late nascent soul stage cultivators and the 4 totemic sacred ancients charged toward Meng Hao. As they closed in on Meng Hao a second time, a blood-colored face appeared next to him. As the blood immortal divine ability roared out, a rain of blood filled the area. The two sides clashed and Meng Hao's body trembled. Blood sprayed from his mouth and he tumbled backward, coughing more blood. His opponents instantly stopped, their faces pale. A moment later, they continued forward in pursuit. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. He had no time to wipe the blood from his mouth. His body transformed into green smoke, and he added the bloodburst flash. When he reappeared, he was behind an early nascent soul cultivator. His right hand clenched into a fist that slammed into the man. The cultivator's body shook, and all defenses crumbled as Meng Hao's fist plunged directly into his body and smashed his nascent soul. "Meng Hao!" roared one of the late nascent soul cultivators that was chasing him, his eyes brimming with killing intent. "Do you dare to fight with us?" "I'm not an idiot," replied Meng Hao, disdain flickering in his eyes. 7 late nascent soul stage cultivators against only one me, and you ask if I dare fight you. First, see if you can stop me." He once again used the bloodburst flash and disappeared. At the same time that he disappeared, 2 more totemic sacred ancients suddenly appeared in the same spot. Even as Meng Hao fled, they joined the group of other totemic sacred ancients to pursue him. In just a few moments, Meng Hao danced across the battlefield, evading deadly attacks. Although hit a few times, he consumed medicinal pills after coughing blood. His speed never slowed. Any feeble early nascent soul stage enemies that he saw were doomed to die. Slowly, more and more late nascent soul stage cultivators joined the group which were trying to kill Meng Hao. Currently, there were 19 of them, as well as 9 totemic sacred ancients. They charged Meng Hao from all directions. Further off in the distance, one of the most powerful of the enemy cultivators also began to approach with killing intent. A scornful smile appeared on Meng Hao's face. He flickered away, reappearing next to one of the bandit tribe's early nascent soul stage cultivators. That person's face fell, and before he could react, Meng Hao waved his hand, causing the flag of 3 streamers to appear. It instantly wrapped the man up and hurled him away. Even as the flag unfurled, the man's body exploded into pieces. Such provocation on Meng Hao's part, especially the appearance of his 400,000 neo-demons, instantly had a huge effect on the battlefield. More and more cultivators joined the force that was trying to slay him. At the same time, because the most powerful members of the enemy force were focused on him, much of the pressure was taken off of the Crow Divinity tribe and the Great Black Dragon tribe. In the initial clash, both tribes had sustained losses of more than 30%, with even nascent soul elders perishing. Similarly, the Bandit Tribe Alliance had paid a heavy price, losing nearly 30,000 tribe members. At this moment, it was becoming obvious that the Crow Divinity tribe members were setting up a formation. A fog was forming within their ranks. "Meng Hao, don't tell me the only thing you can do is run away. If you keep fleeing and killing our tribe members, then we'll have to go slaughter some of the ordinary cultivators of your Crow Divinity tribe." "That's right, we can slaughter people just as well as you." Meng Hao ignored the cries of those chasing him. His body flickered at top speed. Meanwhile, back on the battlement of Blackgate Fort, the cultivators of the Heavenly Court Alliance and the other great tribes were laughing and chatting. "That guy can control 400,000 neo-demons. What a talent. However, it's idiotic to have only one person controlling so many. He will definitely die sooner or later." As such conversations proceeded, Luo Chang stood there with his fists clenched. He had very complicated feelings regarding Meng Hao. Duo Lan frowned but said nothing. Next to her, Zhang Wenzu was smiling just as he had been the entire time. The people engaged in battle down below were nothing more than ants to him. Meanwhile, down on the battlefield, the late nascent soul stage experts realized Meng Hao was ignoring them. Enraged, they were on the verge of splitting up to slaughter the regular members of the Crow Divinity tribe to force Meng Hao to fight. Currently, the 7,000 remaining members of the Crow Divinity tribe had finished preparations for the spell formation. No longer emanating killing intent, they began to run. As they did, fog rose up and roiled out in all directions. At this moment, the parrot shot up to soar through the sky. Its face radiated arrogance and complacency as it squawked. Come, come, recite along with Lord Fifth. Have faith in Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife? This chapter was sponsored by Lim Derrick, Levi Thorstensen, Omar Hamid, and Tony Kirsch. The voices shook the surrounding cultivators of the alliance of 20 bandit tribes. They stared in shock along with the Black Dragon tribe. Everyone was flabbergasted. At the same time, the seething fog grew thicker and emanated a shocking aura. The surrounded members of the bandit tribes fell back. Some who didn't move fast enough were sucked into the fog, and blood-curdling screams echoed as they were trampled to death. Not just the cultivators of the 20 bandit tribes gasped. The Black Dragon tribe, the Heavenly Court Alliance, and other great tribes on Blackgate Fort, everyone was shaken. What are they yelling? Who is Lord Fifth? How come I feel like I've heard this before? At this moment, Meng Hao was the only member of the Crow Divinity tribe on the outside. His body was a wisp of green smoke flickering back and forth, taking advantage of the opportunity to slay more early nascent soul elders. Even as miserable cries rang out, bloodshot gazes turned to Meng Hao as all nascent soul cultivators suddenly focused on him. Given that they could no longer attack the Crow Divinity tribe, Meng Hao was suddenly a target. All the bandit tribes, nascent soul cultivators shot toward him, along with more than 10 totemic sacred ancients. They radiated killing intent as they neared. These powerful experts were a force that could stun anyone under the spirit-severing stage. Even Meng Hao could not withstand their combined attack. If they attacked from all sides, he would be torn to pieces. The forces against him were far more than he could handle. However, that was exactly what Meng Hao wanted. Roughly 70% of the bandit tribes, most powerful experts and totemic sacred ancients closed in on Meng Hao, filled with killing intent and the desire to slay him. At this point, Meng Hao stopped moving. For the first time, he hovered in midair, motionless. His stopping attracted countless looks from the 20 allied bandit tribes. Virtually all their most powerful experts looked at Meng Hao with vicious killing intent and shot toward him. In moments, he was charged from all directions. Die, came the grim cries as they drew closer. In the blink of an eye, they had surrounded Meng Hao. At this point, Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding with his right hand. A wooden box appeared which he held high into the air. His expression dark, he slowly opened its lid. Within the wooden box was a blooming flower. Exotic Heart Devil Flower. 1. The exotic Heart Devil flower was used by the 5 Poisons tribe against the 5 Crow Divinity tribes in chapters 439, 440 and beyond. In this instant, all eyes subconsciously looked at the flower. An intense rumbling filled the minds of all onlookers. The whole battlefield turned deathly silent. Within that silence, the exotic Heart Devil flower began to wilt. The flower was powerful, but too many cultivators were present. The vast number of people caused it to wither. Of course, Meng Hao had long predicted this. After acquiring the flower, he had studied and understood it. All he wanted was this one moment. During that moment, the only people who weren't affected were the members of the Heavenly Court Alliance and the members of the great tribes up on the battlement of Blackgate Fort. It was as if they were in a different world. However, their expressions filled with shock. Absolute silence reigned. They looked down at the exotic Heart Devil flower and the deathly silence covering the battlefield. Exotic Heart Devil flower. Who could ever have imagined that the Crow Divinity tribe would still have that flower? It's a rare flower, somewhat weak. However, used cleverly, it can be a precious treasure. Dual Land breathed heavily as she looked down at the scene. The sense of déjà vu intensified. However, she still could not figure out who Meng Hao was. Next to her, Zhang Wenzu seemed to be paying attention to the scene below, although only slightly. As for Luo Chang, he panted as he looked down at Meng Hao. His complicated feelings held a touch of admiration. Zhou Dekun was blinking. He had never imagined that Meng Hao would have a treasure such as this. Even as everyone on Blackgate Fort's battlement was shocked, down on the battlefield, the nascent soul cultivators chasing Meng Hao and the totemic sacred ancients trembled, motionless. At this point, Meng Hao made his move. A blood clone appeared, its expression greedy, thirsting for life. As it shot toward the more than 10 totemic sacred ancients, Meng Hao stepped forward and hurled the devil's spear. A towering devilish mist rose up, filled with countless faces, and shot toward the crowds. Next, Meng Hao's wood-type totem tattoo appeared on his forehead. A sea of flames roared into being and freezing frost soil spread out. The all-conquering power of his metal-type totem was fused in as well. 4 of the 5 elements exploded outward. The sea of flames burned everything. The gigantic tree extinguished lives. The power of metal slashed through the air. The frost soil kicked up a frigid wind that froze the sky. Booming filled the air as all this happened in the same moment. There were no blood-curdling cries, yet one totemic sacred ancient after another withered. One nascent soul cultivator after another felt their bodies explode. All of it happened in the space of only 8 breaths. During those 8 breaths, Meng Hao was able to completely reverse the situation on the battlefield. For 4 breaths, the power of Meng Hao's 4 element totems swept explosively in all directions. The power transformed into an attack that slammed into the nascent soul cultivators. One bandit tribe elder after another felt their cultivation base burn under the power of the exotic heart devil flower. Their bodies were not under their own control, and their wills were lost. Any power they had to resist Meng Hao's divine abilities and magical techniques was completely weakened to the point where they could not withstand even a single blow. Massive booms echoed across the battlefield as ordinary cultivators of the bandit tribes trembled, their faces filled with confusion. They felt as if their bodies were mere husks. Meng Hao knew the entire battlefield would belong to him for 8 breaths. At the same time, discussions broke out on the battlement of Blackgate Fort. This guy is completely cruel and diabolical. He intentionally caught the attention of all the powerful experts, then took advantage of the situation to use the exotic heart devil flower. He's not just vicious, he's clever at scheming. However, if he thinks he can turn the tide of the entire battle with only that flower, he's naive. That flower has limits. At most it will last 10 breaths before vanishing. Maybe he can kill some people during that time, but how many? For example, those late nascent soul stage experts are powerful enough to last 16 breaths under an exotic heart devil flower. By this time 5 breaths had passed. The exotic heart devil flower was half withered, its power waning. The late nascent soul stage cultivators showed signs of struggle. They would soon shake off the flower's effects. Meng Hao's eyes flickered. He did not continue slaughtering but instead began an incantation. He pointed his finger at the ground, causing boundless demonic chi to rise. A vortex appeared, visible only to him, and rotated soundlessly. Meng Hao became the center of a raging tower of demonic chi. Under the crushing pressure of this demonic chi, the 400,000 enemy neo-demons, who were no longer under the control of their dragoneers, and were also being affected by the exotic heart devil flower, also began to tremble. In their eyes, Meng Hao was like some sort of demon emperor. Because of the demonic chi, they had no choice but to yield to the pressure. As the last of the 8 breaths ran out, one neo-demon after another lowered their heads and began to approach Meng Hao. The exotic heart devil flower was fully wilted. It transformed into ash which then drifted away with the wind. Everyone on the battlefield seemed to wake from sleep. Their bodies trembled as they looked out in confusion. In a moment, the members of the bandit tribes gasped, their expressions filled with complete disbelief. The moment that they woke up, the blood clone finished consuming a 5th totemic sacred ancient. At the same time, 13 of the nascent soul elders who had been surrounding Meng Hao exploded into showers of blood under the power of Meng Hao's 4 elements totems. If that were the extent of it, it wouldn't count for much. However, before the cultivators of the bandit tribe's alliance could even recover from their shock, they saw Meng Hao floating there in midair, surrounded by 400,000 neo-demons. At the same time, shocking roars erupted as the bandit tribes, own 400,000 neo-demons shot toward Meng Hao. This was not an attack, but rather they circled him, emitting subservient cries. As of this moment, 800,000 neo-demons were completely shaking heaven and earth. Since ancient times, no one had ever controlled an 800,000-strong neo-demon horde. To everyone watching, this was virtually inconceivable. Nonetheless, the sky outside Blackgate Fort was filled with 800,000 roaring neo-demons. The sky shook, and everyone on the battlement was thoroughly astonished. Within Blackgate Fort itself, the Heavenly Court Alliance was startled. As for the powerful experts of the great tribes with spirit-severing patriarchs, their minds trembled profoundly. In fact, 4 streams of indescribably powerful divine sense spread out from within the Black Lands. These were streams of divine sense belonging to spirit-severing patriarchs. These streams of divine sense were filled with intrepid, savage power. They passed through Blackgate Fort to sweep across the lands of the Western Desert, eventually coming to rest on Meng Hao and his horde of 800,000 neo-demons. As of this moment, the tide of the battle truly had turned. Everyone who stood atop Blackgate Fort was panting and staring in shock. It was in this moment that a tremor ran through Duo Lan. She suddenly realized why Meng Hao seemed so familiar. Her face filled with an expression of complete disbelief. Next to her, Zhang Wenzu's face filled with concentration. As he looked at the 800,000 neo-demons, his scalp went numb. Now the Crow Divinity Tribe didn't need to attack, nor did the Black Dragon Tribe need to fight. Meng Hao waved his hand, causing the 800,000 neo-demons to charge toward the allied bandit tribes. The land trembled and the sky shook. The clouds roiled as the sounds of slaughter spread. Miserable shrieks rang through the air as the bandit cultivators, their totemic sacred ancients, great fathers, and other powerful experts were instantly stupefied. They wanted to kill Meng Hao, but he was now hidden behind 800,000 neo-demons. How could they possibly kill him? They wanted to slaughter the members of the Crow Divinity and Great Black Dragon Tribe, to cause Meng Hao to show his face. However, the fog of the Crow Divinity Tribe's spell formation towered up, within which could be seen the shadows of running figures. The members of the Great Black Dragon Tribe were quickly absorbed into the fog of the spell formation, concealing them completely. When Meng Hao first laid eyes on these 20 allied bandit tribes, he knew that in this last battle, despite the Crow Divinity and Black Dragon Tribe's prowess, they would be defeated. There were just too many cultivators in the bandit tribes. Even if miraculously the 10,000 Crow Divinity members survived and a few hundred entered the Black Lands, they would no longer be the Crow Divinity Tribe. If the Crow Divinity Tribe entered the Black Lands with most of its strength, it could combine with the Church of the Golden Light and become a powerful force, maintaining self-respect. That was exactly the outcome Meng Hao hoped for. There was only one way to make it happen. In the Western Desert, only one thing was considered the source of true power. His greatest strength lay not in the 5 elements totems, nor in his cultivation base or magical items. Many exceeded him in such aspects. Even his position as a totemic sacred ancient counted for little. His blood clone was strong, but could not face 200,000 cultivators. The Devil's Spear was domineering, but he had only one. Meng Hao's greatest strength was his identity as a demon sealer. As a demon sealer in the Western Desert, he could congeal and manipulate boundless demonic qi. He could transform neo-demons and make them more powerful than himself. He could control them and accomplish what he alone could not. That was his greatest asset. It was also why the Crow Divinity Tribe had been able to leave the Western Desert North region and travel all the way to here. Therefore, the exotic Heart Devil flower had appeared. Slaying totemic sacred ancients and nascent soul elders was secondary. While everyone focused on him, he needed 4 or 5 breaths while surrounded. That time was crucial. He needed the 100 or so dragoneers of the allied bandit tribes to lose control of their neo-demons. That was how Meng Hao could execute his plan. That was why he had pulled out the exotic Heart Devil flower. His goal was not to confuse ordinary cultivators or bewilder nascent soul experts. He had been targeting the 100 dragoneers hidden within their neo-demon hordes, the cultivators he had ignored from the beginning. At this moment, he had accomplished his goal. 800,000 neo-demons shook heaven and earth, rocking the battlefield. The Heavenly Court Alliance was shocked, as were all other Western Desert cultivators watching. The neo-demons instantly charged toward the shocked bandit tribe members. This last battle was destined to be filled with foul winds and rains of blood. It was something the likes of which had never occurred in the history of the Western Desert. Everyone atop Blackgate Fort watched on in silence, even the 4 streams of divine sense from the spirit-severing patriarchs. As the 800,000 neo-demons closed in, the bandit tribe members' eyes filled with red. They charged forward, howling, "Kill them!" At the same time, all of the totemic sacred ancients and all of the nascent soul cultivators shot forward, transforming into something like a sharp arrow, piercing through the neo-demon horde toward Meng Hao. Kill Meng Hao and the neo-demon horde will collapse. In this critical moment, the great fathers of the 20 bandit tribes roared, congealing the peak power that existed on the battlefield as they shot toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao floated within the neo-demon horde, looking with cold eyes as neo-demons circled him. Miserable shrieks rang out as cultivators were ripped to shreds. At this moment, Meng Hao sensed the ruthlessness of warfare. The world before him was awash in redness. That redness was blood, of neo-demons and cultivators. The land turned red, so red the violet rain could not wash it away. This was a true massacre. The vast neo-demon horde meant that even as neo-demons fell, more attacked the bandit tribe cultivators. Blood-curdling screams filled the air. It was like the yellow springs of the underworld had turned red. Blood, thought Meng Hao as he looked down. Suddenly he reached enlightenment. Blood was also water. It was water containing life, the source of life force. Having blood didn't necessarily mean you were alive, but without it, you would certainly not be. I'm bound to blood by karma. The blood immortal legacy, all the slaughtering from my cultivation. Blood is a totem. What are totems? They are not a manifestation of my will and enlightenment. They are power from the 9 mountains and seas, a seed of power. Muttering to himself, he closed his eyes, ignoring the bandit alliance's powerful experts who rushed to reach and kill him. As they neared, neo-demons blocked their way, and more blood showered down. At this moment, the members of the Crow divinity tribe moved forward with the spell formation. Fog churned, and the sound of running echoed. Massive golden figures charged within. As the fog reached the bandit tribe members, miserable shrieks erupted. A howl erupted as the parrot appeared in midair. In a squawk heard across the battlefield, it said, "Come, come, shout with me, have faith in Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When Lord Fifth appears, who dares cause strife?" As the voices echoed from the spell formation fog, another batch of roiling fog emerged from the black lands. It was identical in appearance, and loud, clear voices rang out, filled with excitement and determination. "Have faith in Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When Lord Fifth appears, who dares cause strife? Lord Fifth, we welcome you back with respectful hearts. Patriarch, we welcome you back with respectful hearts." These voices caused observers on Blackgate Fort's battlement to stare in shock. Within the approaching fog were 7,000 or 8,000 enormous figures. They charged through midair, passing from the Black Lands into the western desert and toward the battlefield. That's the Church of the Golden Light. The spell formation of the Crow divinity tribe is exactly the same as that of the Church of the Golden Light. When the Church of the Golden Light appeared, it was like a sharp blade that stabbed into the already scattered and battered bandit alliance. Together with the Crow divinity tribe, they began a slaughter of spell formations that hit the enemy from 2 directions at the same time. The Great Black Dragon tribe also charged out from the Crow divinity spell formation, engaging in bloody slaughter. The battle was now one-sided. The bandit tribe's advantage was lost because of the 800,000 neo-demons. Hopelessness and terror filled them. Miserable screams filled the air as they lost all will to fight. The slaughter continued nonetheless. 150,000, 130,000, 100,000, 80,000, 50,000. The bandit tribe's numbers fell quickly to only 50,000 cultivators. The other 150,000 were corpses. Their blood flowed out, making the area outside Blackgate Fort a lake of blood. The reek of gore filled the air. The top experts and totemic sacred ancients were seriously injured and nearly crazed, slaughtering through neo-demons to reach Meng Hao. The slaughter below drew little attention. The eyes of the cultivators on Blackgate Fort's battlement were drawn toward Meng Hao, who floated protected by neo-demons. Meng Hao was the key to everything. If he died, then the bandit tribes could still secure victory in the battle. Booming filled the air as dozens of nascent soul cultivators and rapidly weakening totemic sacred ancients carved through the neo-demon crowds. The neo-demons, giving no thought to their own lives, threw themselves at the enemy. The enemy slaughtered their way toward Meng Hao. Several hundred meters separated them, packed with neo-demons. The enemy cultivators could not reach Meng Hao. Too many neo-demons blocked them. The demonic chi of 800,000 neo-demons created an unspeakable pressure that made teleportation impossible. All they could do was charge physically and try to kill their way to Meng Hao. Meng Hao's closed eyes snapped open. His pupils glowed with a red will of blood, reflecting the lake below. It was the same color as his mask, merged with it. "Blood is water. I had the totem all along, never realizing it. It has always been here." His skin turned blood red. The blood immortal mask seemed to disappear. Meng Hao's body was the same color as the mask. It was no longer a mask but his true face. His robe had turned red. His hair was crimson. He looked exactly like a blood clone. "Not quite there," he murmured. "This blood totem will belong to the blood immortal, not me." He raised his right hand, causing the Jai clan blood clone far off pouncing toward another cultivator to suddenly tremble. Unwilling but unable to resist, it disappeared and reappeared directly in front of Meng Hao. Meng Hao pointed at the blood clone, and instantly it transformed into a beam of light that fused into Meng Hao's finger. Shockingly, a totem tattoo suddenly appeared on Meng Hao's finger in that same spot. A red totem tattoo, a blood totem. As soon as the totem appeared, Meng Hao's cultivation base exploded up. It was as if it had been restrained for too long, and now it was finally able to climb high. In the blink of an eye, it exploded out in a way that caused the approaching Bandit Alliance experts and totemic sacred ancients to be filled with stupefied astonishment. This chapter was sponsored by James Timmerman. Chapter 514, Five Elements Temporarily Combine. Meng Hao's hair whipped about his head despite the lack of wind. His eyes glowed with a profound light. Everything around him was bright red. The lake of blood below began to boil and rise up into the air. If that were all, the blood tattoo's true fearsomeness would not be manifest. However, all cultivators suddenly felt their blood was out of control, as if about to burst from within. The bandit tribe members felt this way, as did the cultivators atop Blackgate Fort. Everyone was instantly shocked by this development. Everything dimmed. Above, winds blew and clouds roiled. A fountain of blood rose in midair within the Neo-Demon horde, focused on Meng Hao's finger. At the same time, in the southern domain, some distance from the border of the Black Lands, a bloody glow rose up into the sky from the ancient Temple of Doom. This glow instantly caused the great sects and clans of the southern domain to stir into action. All of the deity statues within the ancient Temple of Doom began to weep tears of blood. It was a bizarre sight which shook the entire southern domain. It seemed the statues commemorated the blood immortal's power returning to the world. Meanwhile, back in the great lands of the western desert, outside Blackgate Fort, Meng Hao slowly looked up at the shocked peak experts of the Bandit Alliance. With the Jai clan blood clone, I can congeal a blood totem. It can't match the violet rain, so I won't make it permanent. To temporarily reach the full circle of the five elements will suffice. Or I can fuse the blood totem with the violet rain and reach the great circle of the water-type totem. Eyes filled with anticipation, Meng Hao lifted his hand and pressed his finger to his forehead. Five elements, temporarily combine. The power burst of the spirit of the golden crow, metal. The boundless life force of the greenwood tree, wood. The frost soil which gave birth to the frost soil demon emperor, earth. The ever-burning flame, fire. And now the legacy power of the blood immortal transformed into blood, water. In this instant, the five elements reached their great circle. Though only temporary, it caused Meng Hao's cultivation base to soar. His perfect gold core emanated golden light. A nascent soul became visible. At the same time, the five elements began to combine. Metal, wood, water, earth, fire. The five elements fused, promoting and restraining each other to form a primeval chaotic will. Within appeared a strand of light. This light was golden, the same gold as the five elements, metal and his metal-type totem. It matched his perfect gold core. As the golden light appeared, Meng Hao's cultivation base roared up. It climbed up ceaselessly. In the blink of an eye, he broke out from the gold core stage and into the early nascent soul stage. His perfect gold core began to melt, from within which emerged a nascent soul that belonged uniquely to Meng Hao. Now Meng Hao could slay early nascent soul experts, shock mid-nascent soul, and stand against late nascent soul. Victory against the latter remained uncertain. This power far exceeded core formation. His five-colored nascent soul had grown step by step with each totem tattoo. Now he possessed unprecedented and terrifying battle prowess. Surprisingly, Meng Hao appeared to be at the great circle of core formation to outside divine sense. Yet no one could deny he was nascent soul. Many assumed he was deliberately posing as core formation. At the moment Meng Hao's cultivation base exploded upward into early nascent soul, a nascent soul formed within his gold core. All watching cultivators, faces filled with disbelief as they gasped. He had a cultivation base breakthrough. He's in the nascent soul stage. How is this possible? He reached the nascent soul stage. Don't tell me that before he really was just a core formation cultivator. That's impossible. Perhaps he was already a nascent soul cultivator before, but experienced a cultivation base drop and now is recovering. Astonished conversation spread across the battlefield, the battlement of Blackgate Fort, and among the bandit tribe peak experts fighting through the horde. Even as they struggled with astonishment, a second beam of light rose from Meng Hao alongside the golden light. Green. Green light interlocked with gold. Meng Hao's hair whipped about as boundless life force emanated from him. His cultivation base soared higher. Now he was at the peak of early nascent soul, only a step from mid-nascent soul. This explosion instantly shook all watching. As Meng Hao lifted his head and roared, three colors appeared behind him, a three-colored sky. Gold, green, plus the color which represented his water-type blood totem, red. The three colors were reflected in the firmament as Meng Hao's cultivation base leaped higher, climbing ceaselessly and breaking through to the mid-nascent soul stage. As of this moment, the faces of each and every person observing were filled with disbelief. Duo Lan's eyes were wide, as if she was seeing something unimaginable. Even Zhang Wenzu's eyes were flickering with deeper and deeper concentration. Next, a fourth world-shaking color suddenly appeared, yellow. Behind Meng Hao, a four-colored sky could be seen. His cultivation base did not stop climbing, but rather continued to rocket up. It was as if all the methodical preparations he had made were now being unleashed with explosive results. His energy exploded, and his aura grew vastly more intrepid as five beams of light interlocked behind him to form a five-colored sky. That fifth color was black. Five elements, five colors. In this moment they transformed into a five-colored sky that circulated around Meng Hao. His clothes rippled, and his hair was in chaos. His eyes glowed with a bizarre, brilliant light. Meng Hao floated there, his body emanating radiant five-colored light, a five-colored sky behind him. As of this moment, there were no totem tattoos visible on his body. All he possessed was the five-colored sky and an indescribably fearsome aura. These five colors stemmed from Meng Hao's five elements. Gold came from the metal-type tattoo, green came from the wood-type, the water-type blood made red, the soil of frost was black. Finally came fire. It was not red but yellow, a raging flame that rose up into the sky. His cultivation base rocketed up a final time. His aura exploded out with incredible intensity, profoundly affecting all the cultivators who were watching. Deep in their hearts, it caused all onlookers to feel fear and trembling. Finally, he reached the peak of the mid-nascent soul stage. His distance from the late-nascent soul stage was only a sliver. At last, the rocketing climb of his cultivation base came to a stop. Everyone on the battlefield was shaken as they looked at Meng Hao. This explosive cultivation base growth came after years of suppressing his gold core. In this instant, he experienced meteoric growth into the peak of the mid-nascent soul stage as he unleashed all that had been pent up before. Earlier, he could battle with the late-nascent soul stage. As of now, Meng Hao was powerful enough that, although he might not be able to shake the spirit-severing stage, he could crush any cultivator under that stage like dry weeds or rotten wood. He would be able to cut through any of them like a hot knife cutting through butter. Despite all that, Meng Hao let out a sigh. If I can understand this violet rain, then I could merge it into the blood totem and create a great circle water-type totem. When that happens, my cultivation base will definitely be able to break through from the mid-nascent soul stage. Meng Hao knew that his current cultivation base was not truly of the great circle of the five elements, and thus could not propel him past the mid-nascent soul stage. That was not what he truly wanted. The water of these five elements contained part of the blood, immortal. What he wanted was the violet rain of the western desert apocalypse. That was his choice. At present, his five elements cultivation base was only a temporary fusion. In fact, his nascent soul was actually illusory, and the five elements were not fully combined. He had not concocted his five-colored nascent soul. Once he did, then his cultivation base would be completely stable. Suddenly, a bizarre light shone in his eyes. He looked off into the distance at the countless neo-demons and the astonished experts and totemic sacred ancients of the bandit tribes. I think it's time to test out the battle prowess of this temporary combination of the five elements. Even as he murmured to himself, the neo-demons roared and pounced onto the bandit tribe experts, forcing them to defend themselves. Suddenly, one of the nascent soul experts was separated from the others by the neo-demons. A wide-open space was then cleared, an empty lane providing a clear line of sight from him to Meng Hao, who was a few hundred meters away. The old man and Meng Hao looked at each other for a moment, and then Meng Hao coolly said, "Bring it on." "Such arrogance and conceit," roared the old man, who happened to be a high priest. His eyes flickered coldly as he used minor teleportation to shoot toward Meng Hao. The rest of the members of his tribe, including the elders and the great father, had been killed because of the exotic heart devil flower. As of now, he was the only peak-level expert left from his tribe. He shot forward, his eyes flickering with intense killing intent. As he neared, his totem magically appeared above his head. It was an immense star which then transformed into a gigantic boulder 3,000 meters wide. Rumbling sounded out as it shot through the air toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao hovered there, his expression tranquil. He waved his right hand, causing the five-colored sky to flicker. A swooshing sound could be heard as a five-colored light expanded out and then disappeared. A moment later, the incoming boulder shook and then disintegrated. The sight of this caused everyone watching to be shocked, especially the charging high priest. His face filled with disbelief. It was at this point that Meng Hao distractedly waved his hand and pointed forward. As he pointed, the five-colored sky rippled and then disappeared. When it reappeared, it had congealed onto Meng Hao's finger. Then his finger descended, and blinding five-colored light shot toward the old man. He was a high priest, but his face flickered nonetheless. He roared as he unleashed divine abilities and magical items. He shot backward, using several minor teleportations to suddenly disappear and then reappear off in the distance. He reacted quickly and moved with incredible speed. It seemed as if no matter how swift and fierce the five-colored beam of light was, it wouldn't be able to touch him. However, suddenly he found that his entire body was trembling. He coughed up a mouthful of blood as a five-colored glow appeared on his chest. He stared down in disbelief, unable to do anything except gape. "How is this possible?" "As you can see," said Meng Hao softly, his eyes shining with enlightenment, "you cannot evade the power of the five elements." The old man said nothing, but a bitter smile appeared on his face. Suddenly, his entire body turned red as all the blood inside exploded out. Popping sounds could be heard as it was transformed into a bloody mist. At the same time, a golden light flew out from within him, transforming his entire body from inside to out into a statue made of gold. However, he still wasn't dead. The fact that he theoretically had a chance to survive was like a bitter torment as he fell toward the ground. But then a sea of flames erupted out from inside of him, burning him dead, body and soul. Chapter 515, An Initial Understanding of Karma. Different combinations of five elements will have different manifestations, thought Meng Hao, having gained new enlightenment. He looked up at the pale-faced bandit tribe experts and totemic sacred ancients. They wanted to kill him, but were now surrounded and cut off by countless neo-demons and were severely weakened. They really had no way to get to him. They were surrounded by hundreds of thousands of neo-demons. They couldn't even reach Meng Hao, let alone kill him. "We're defeated," said one of the old experts bitterly. As of now, they knew they had lost and knew that Meng Hao fundamentally could not be killed. Meng Hao was not impulsive. Despite his power surge, he would act cautiously. They knew he would face them one at a time, not all together. Facing up against an enemy like this caused these Bandit Alliance experts to be filled with a sensation of powerlessness. As soon as the old man's words echoed out, the scattered bandit tribe members down below on the ground slowly began to give up. They ceased fighting back and stood there silently. Of the original 200,000 members, not 20% remained. The battle wasn't won by Meng Hao alone. The crushing power of his 800,000 neo-demons was unstoppable. Now that he had defeated the Bandit Alliance, Meng Hao did not continue to contain or slaughter them. He allowed the broken remnants of the tribes to leave the battlefield. As they disappeared into the surrounding plains, Meng Hao led the Crow Divinity Tribe, the Church of the Golden Light, the Black Dragon Tribe, and 800,000 neo-demons to stand before Blackgate Fort. He lifted his head to look at the battlemen above. "The Crow Divinity Tribe has arrived with a demon spirit," he said slowly, his voice echoing out into the Black Lands. Subai stood next to Meng Hao. He looked up at the enormous gate leading into the Black Lands, took a deep breath and said, "The great Black Dragon Tribe has arrived with a demon spirit." There was a brief moment of silence, after which an enormous rumbling could be heard as Blackgate Fort's huge gate slowly began to open. As the gate opened, the crowds on top of the battlement looked down. Virtually all of the gazes swept over the people down below and came to rest on Meng Hao. Conversations immediately began to spread out. "It seems that from now on, the Black Lands is going to be a bit more lively than before. This Meng Hao has an extraordinary cultivation base and bizarre divine abilities. His totems are even more shocking. He can even slay late nascent soul stage cultivators. He will definitely rise to even more prominence in the future here in the Black Lands. The Western Desert Apocalypse has culminated. Soon we'll see the sea from Blackgate Fort. The Crow Divinity Tribe and Black Dragon Tribe slaughtered their way here. They're the only two tribes to enter the Black Lands this way with a demon spirit. Unusual." Hearing their conversations caused Luo Chang to roll his eyes. He occasionally looked back down into the crowd of people below at Meng Hao. As for what he was thinking, it was impossible to tell. Jodekun's expression was one of excitement as he looked down at Meng Hao, a wide smile splitting his face. Duo Lan was frowning at first, but quickly caused her face to relax. She continued to look deeply at Meng Hao. Next to her, Zhang Wenzu was smiling. Shaking his head, he said, 5 elements totems combined together. An interesting idea. Unfortunately, it's only temporary. It won't be long before it floats away like a rootless lily pad. He's definitely not chosen material. When I meet him in the future here in the Black Lands, I'll have to help him understand why combining the 5 elements is nothing more than a joke. He smiled. At the moment, the massive rumbling continued to sound out as the gate finished opening completely to reveal an opening that looked like a door, roughly 300 meters wide. Sunlight poured out from within. On the other side was the Black Lands. It was as if this door was the separating point between 2 worlds. Su Bai took a deep breath and turned to Meng Hao. Clasping hands, he bowed deeply. Brother Meng, words cannot express my gratitude for your kindness. Our alliance will never change. I will lead my tribe into the Black Lands. After we reorganize, we can chat. Meng Hao laughed and nodded in response, but didn't say anything. With that, Su Bai led the thousands of members of his great tribe toward Blackgate Fort. They quickly disappeared inside and entered into the Black Lands. As the Black Dragon tribe made their way in, Meng Hao looked back at the members of the Crow Divinity tribe behind him. After a long moment, his gaze finally came to rest on the members who had once been part of the 5 tribes. There were only a few hundred left. Wu Chen and Wu Ling were among them. There was also the Great Father who had burned his life force all those years ago. He was now very old, with not much longevity left. Meng Hao looked at them. They looked back. No words were exchanged. After all the years spent together, they knew Meng Hao quite well. Within the silence was a deep melancholy. After a moment, Meng Hao smiled. He looked at the few hundred former members of the 5 Crow Divinity tribes and the members picked up along the way. His voice warm, he said, "At last I have led you here. Now I deliver your hope." He had traveled with them for many years, fought by their side. At last they had reached their destination, the gate to the Black Lands. It was open, waiting for them. "You may continue to practice cultivation with my totems," he continued. "In addition, I have branded the other totemic sacred ancients that we acquired so that the Crow Divinity tribe may form totems from them. My vines have recovered. I will give them to you as a protector and guard." He waved his hand, causing a thorn rampart vine seed to appear. He quickly branded it with a mission. Protect the Crow Divinity tribe. After that, he gave the vine seed to the Crow Divinity tribe Greatfather. The old man looked silently at Meng Hao and thought back to all the scenes from years past, and to what Meng Hao had said about giving hope to the tribe. All that had happened flashed through his mind, blurring his vision as he looked at Meng Hao. "Starting today," said Meng Hao softly, "the Church of the Golden Light will be part of the Crow Divinity tribe. From now on, the tribe will not be called Crow Divinity, but rather the Golden Crow Clan." The members of the Crow Divinity tribe began to tremble. It was hard to say who did it first, but they all began to drop to their knees and kowtow to Meng Hao. No one spoke. However, the tears in their eyes and the looks on their familiar faces made clear their deep respect, fanaticism, and gratitude for Meng Hao. Meng Hao looked at them and smiled. It was a smile that said, "The time has come to part." He turned and looked at Gula. "Gula, henceforth, you are free. Before releasing you, though, I must say that I truly hope you remain as a member of the Golden Crow clan, to be their dragoneer." Gula trembled as he dropped to his knees and stared at Meng Hao in a daze. On the long road of travel, his past grievances had long since vanished. He wore a strange expression at the moment, one filled with reluctance to part ways. After a moment, he lowered his head and voiced his agreement. "I give you the wild giant," continued Meng Hao. "Treat it well." Meng Hao looked over at the wild giant. Throughout the years it had been injured repeatedly, its body covered with scars. Despite that, it was mighty. It looked at Meng Hao with a blank expression, not quite understanding. "As for these 800,000 neo-demons, I will not take any of them with me. I give them to all of you to form the backbone of the Golden Crow clan's battle prowess. I will personally brand all of them so that you don't need to control them. They will be here to protect the Golden Crow clan." With that, he waved his right hand. Immediately, 800,000 neo-demons roared a shocking roar. Each one of them looked at Meng Hao as if they were communicating with him. Grievous whines could be heard from Big Harry and the others, as if they were unwilling to separate. Meng Hao looked at the Greenwood Wolves with a soft smile. He thought back to all the years ago when he had joined the 5 Crow Divinity tribes, and had first laid eyes on the 5 greenwood wolf pups. He could still remember their plaintive yips after going hungry for a whole night. He thought about how he ran out into the mountain forest to find food for them. "You've grown up now," he said softly. "You don't need to follow me anymore. Where I'm going, the 5 of you can't go." Their mournful howls seemed to cause the surrounding members of the Golden Crow clan to be roused from their prostration. They raised their heads to look at Meng Hao with expressions of grief. "Exalted Sacred Ancient, please, do not leave the Golden Crow clan. Exalted Sacred Ancient, can't you stay with us in the Black Lands? Without you, Exalted Sacred Ancient, we would have long since perished on the way here. Sacred Ancient, the Golden Crow clan will forever remember your kindness." Hearing all their words caused Meng Hao to stand there silently for a long moment. Finally, he shook his head and looked at them earnestly. "There is no need for you to thank me," he said quietly. "Everything I did was to pay a debt of gratitude to the Golden Crow and the Great Tree. It was also my way of making an apology. Perhaps this is karma." He waved his hand, causing one of the demon spirits he had sealed to fly over into the hands of the Great Father. "Take it and enter in the Black Lands." He gave a deep look to the Golden Crow clan, then glanced at the Black Lands. He knew that the remaining demon spirit he possessed would soon lead to conflicts. Deciding not to remain behind any longer, he turned his back on the Black Lands and strode off. Taking advantage of the temporary 5 elements combination, he quickly shot off into the distance and disappeared. "Beloved concubine," said the parrot in a fair imitation of Meng Hao, "you stay behind here to recover from your wounds. Please take care of the Church of the Golden Light for me. Lord Fifth will come back for you." Looking both sad and arrogant, it flapped its wings as it shot off into the distance to follow Meng Hao. "Haha, freedom, bitches. My beloved concubine is too protective. I can't deal with that. Finally, I'm free. Ah, the smell of freedom, how lovely." Exalted Sacred Ancient. As Meng Hao left, all of the members of the Golden Crow clan turned and once again prostrated themselves toward him. After a long time passed, they slowly rose to their feet. Filled with melancholy, unsure of the future, they took their 800,000 neo-demons and entered the Black Lands. Meng Hao's departure caused the faces of crowds on the battlement above to be filled with shock. Zhang Wenzu's pupils constricted. He suddenly realized that his judgment of Meng Hao had been completely off. Where is he going? Du Lan was shocked. Zhou Decan stared with wide eyes. Far off in the distance, Meng Hao proceeded onward. His expression was calm, his entire bearing completely different than it had been before. If I hadn't chosen to go to the 5 Crow divinity tribes that year, the Golden Crow could have lived for another 1,000 years. My arrival was the sowing of karma. The reaping of that karma was the death of the Golden Crow. However, that reaping was another sowing. Because the Golden Crow perished, the Crow divinity tribes declined and narrowly escaped being exterminated. They were nearly wiped away in the apocalypse. That was a reaping of karma. Sowing contains reaping, reaping contains sowing. Everything that happened before was all sowing. Karma was reaped after I led the Crow divinity tribe out of the north all the way to the Black Lands. It is similar to repaying kindnesses. The kindness is the sowing of karma, and the repayment is the reaping of it. Karma is about cause and effect. I understand now. As he traveled along, his eyes began to glow with enlightenment. It was as if he could see the faint karma threads attached to all living things. Laughing, Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding to produce the Jai clan fishing rod. As he cast it out, within his heart floated the sense of the karma of all living things. This chapter was sponsored by Brandy Lee Dennis, Jerry Hu, LB, Aaron Stout, Omar Hamid, Sebastian Weiss, and Anonymous. Chapter 516. Without severing the spirit, how could you live past 1,000? Starting in the north and then extending to the east and west, the great lands of the western desert slowly became a violet-colored sea. The sea spread out to eventually cover the south as well. It stopped outside Blackgate Fort. At this point, it was truly a boundless sea. Blackgate Fort submerged. 10,000 years later, the seawater would vanish, revealing new land. That would be the true end of the apocalypse. The western desert would reappear, perhaps unfamiliar to the cultivators in the Black Lands, but some would search for their tribe's roots from 10,000 years before. Right now, Blackgate Fort's gate was closing, signifying an official end to the migration. Meng Hao's laughter rang out as he gained enlightenment regarding karma. He saw the karma threads. By casting out the fishing line, he could control the treasure just like a member of the Jai clan. To Meng Hao, this was an extra, unexpected benefit. So karma has been with me all along. He shot through the air, the parrot perched on his shoulder. The meat jelly was attached to the parrot's foot like always. One man, one parrot, and one meat jelly shot through the downpour of violet rain. They were surrounded by the power of extermination. Spiritual energy was completely cut off. After parting ways with the Golden Crow clan, Meng Hao chose not to enter the Black Lands. He made a different choice. He would stay behind within the Violet Rain apocalypse in order to form his water-type totem. As for the blood totem, that was not Meng Hao's choice of totems. He would place himself within the Violet Rain apocalypse in order to gain enlightenment and understand the true meaning of the Violet Sea. As he shot through the air, his eyes suddenly glittered. "Now that I've left the plains outside the Black Lands," he murmured, "the pursuit should be catching up." He suddenly stopped in midair, turning to look behind him. "I'm probably being chased, not by the nascent soul stage, but spirit severing." His eyes glowed brightly as he looked around, and he smiled. A long moment passed before his gaze came to be fixed at a spot not too far off. "It will most likely be spirit severing. After my display back at Blackgate Fort, no ordinary nascent soul cultivator would be willing to try to interfere with me." As Meng Hao thought about the spirit severing stage, his eyes suddenly filled with a burning passion. Spirit severing was indescribably powerful, sought after second only to immortal ascension. The mysteries lay not in divine abilities, but in the manifestation of the domain. Each severing was an instance of using the domain. Only spirit-severing cultivators could call their cultivation a Tao. In the cultivation of the spirit-severing stage, medicinal pills were secondary. The most important thing was enlightenment regarding the domain. Every spirit-severing patriarch had a different domain. Their life experiences transformed the Tao into a blade of severing. The first severing was early, the second mid, the third late. Each severing caused the cultivation base to rise. When all three were completed, spirit severing was at great circle. After that came Tao seeking. The reason why it was called Tao seeking was that the body of the cultivator contained a Tao. Within the three severings of the spirit severing stage, one's Tao was discovered, then questions arose. Once the Tao was solidified, then one was qualified for immortal ascension. Unless doubts arose during Tao seeking, then the Tao vanished and the body perished, everything became emptiness. There is a saying that once enlightened, one can die happy. That is how one could describe the Tao-seeking stage. Once enlightenment was gained and one's own Tao was solidified, then one could smile even in death. Spirit-severing, Tao-seeking, immortal ascension. Those were the ultimate pursuits of the cultivators in the great lands of South Heaven. 3 stages, each one of which could lead to death. However, when the final goal of immortal ascension was reached, the cultivator would then be qualified to leave South Heaven and travel among the stars. There, one's personal Tao could become even more strong and blossom like a resplendent flower. When such a beautiful flower blossomed, one could die laughing at the heavens, having lived a life not in vain. That was the path of immortal ascension. Meng Hao's path, Su Qing's path, Chu Yuyan's path, Chen Fan, Fatty, and all the others all were treading such a path. Objectively speaking, though, whether you looked at the Western Desert or the Southern Domain, Tao-seeking experts were as rare as phoenix feathers and Kilin horns. Even spirit-severing experts were not common. Generally speaking, even great tribes in the Western Desert would have only one spirit-severing patriarch, which was the reason why they could sustain their legacies throughout the years and become truly powerful. It was similar in the Southern Domain. Spirit-severing experts were not common. Furthermore, the majority remained within the first severing. Those who reached the second were less common, and as for the third, they were even rarer. That was because each severing could be fatal. Lack of success meant certain death. In fact, many cultivators who became spirit-severing patriarchs chose not to continue on with further severings. Failure meant death. The power of the spirit-severing stage lay in the domain. It could influence divine abilities, could change the laws of nature, could accomplish whatever the heart desired. From the perspective of nascent soul cultivators, it could do things that seemed impossible. Take, for example, Patriarch Reliance. The fact that he could carry away the state of Zhao with him had something to do with this cultivation base. However, that action was actually a manifestation of spirit severing. Another example was the Patriarch of the Frigid Snow clan. Of his own power, he could shake everything in the area. However, once his cultivation base fell, it instigated an attack. If one wished to enter the spirit-severing stage, the initial step was the first severing, which could not be avoided. It was an enormous obstacle that had to be passed by any cultivator who wished to proceed beyond the nascent soul stage. In fact, it was an obstacle that many nascent soul cultivators could not pass. Because of that, they ended up staying within the great circle of the nascent soul stage until their longevity expired, whereupon they became skeletons and returned to the dust. If one could not live past 1,000 years and could not defy the heavens, how could one be of the spirit-severing stage? The longevity of the nascent soul stage was roughly 1,000 years. Even with the use of shocking medicinal pills that could increase longevity, it was impossible to exceed 1,000 years of life. That was one of the laws of heaven and earth. 1,000 years was the absolute limit to the longevity of a cultivator. However, with the first severing of spirit severing, 500 to 1,000 years of longevity could be hewn out. As to exactly how much, that depended on the person as well as the domain. In any case, the longevity would definitely exceed 1,000 years. Passing beyond 1,000 was a defiance of the heavens. That was why reaching spirit severing was so difficult. It was difficult to an ultimate degree. Meng Hao took a deep breath, taking the stubbornness and desire that shone in his eyes and concealing it deep within his heart. He would continue down this path to immortal ascension, in a way that had never been done before. That was the determination in Meng Hao's heart. The five-colored nascent soul was only the first step. Meng Hao looked out into the air, but could only see the downpour of violet rain. Everything was deserted, with no one visible except for him. Meng Hao was quiet for a long moment, 10 breaths of time to be exact. Suddenly, a translucent figure slowly began to appear in midair several thousand meters in front of Meng Hao. As the figure became visible, a strange, invisible power seemed to affect the violet rain in the area. It was pushed aside, ensuring that not even a single drop landed on the figure. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever, as if nothing out of the ordinary was going on. However, it was at this moment that the parrot opened its eyes wide. All of the multicolored feathers on its body stood on end. The meat jelly bell on its foot began to tremble, causing tinkling bell sounds to ring out. "Damn it, spirit severing," said the parrot, gaping. It was impossible to tell exactly what it was thinking. It looked down ruthlessly at the meat jelly bell and said, "Shut up, quit shaking. Your shaking is really annoying, Lord Fifth." In response, the meat jelly's shaking grew even more intense. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever. He had long since predicted that, after the Crow divinity tribe entered the Black Lands and handed over the demon spirit, the fact that there was a second demon spirit would quickly be discovered. Considering that the Heavenly Court Alliance wanted demon spirits, it was possible that other great tribes with spirit-severing patriarchs would grow greedy. That meant there was a high possibility that they would try to catch and kill him. Such circumstances would have been even more difficult to avoid if he had entered the Black Lands himself. Furthermore, it would have implicated the Crow divinity tribe. His only option was to leave. Even leaving, though, would likely result in people coming after him. However, it now had nothing to do with the Crow divinity tribe. The scene of Meng Hao leaving Blackgate Fort had been witnessed by too many people. From that moment on, it was tantamount to Meng Hao severing his karma with the Crow divinity tribe. "Do you know why I'm here?" asked the transparent figure, slowly opening its eyes. The opening of its eyes caused everything in the vicinity to suddenly change. It was as if some indescribable, invisible force of law had enveloped the entire area. The figure did not open its mouth to speak. Instead, its voice resonated in Meng Hao's mind like thunder. Intense aura caused Meng Hao to feel as if he were about to suffocate. A mere thought on the part of this figure caused the violet rain in the area to stop moving. It paused, motionless in midair. The sight of the drops of water floating there motionless in midair was truly shocking. This was something that no nascent soul cultivator could do. This was not a divine ability, but a command of laws. This was a domain. Only spirit-severing experts were possessed with domain. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he looked at the translucent figure. "So, I have been pursued, not by a nascent soul cultivator, but someone of the spirit-severing stage." "Hand over that demon spirit," said the translucent figure, staring at Meng Hao. "Then you can be on your way." Its expression was one of neither happiness nor anger. It continued to stand there, its mouth closed but its voice echoing in Meng Hao's mind. "Hold on a second," squawked the parrot. It suddenly flew up into the air. At the same time, the meat jelly bell on its foot continued to chatter. Flapping its wings rapidly, the parrot continued, "Heh heh. Look, big brother, Lord Fifth is not on the same side as this kid. Aya. Now that I think about it, my beloved concubine is back at home waiting for me. See you later." "Big brother," gushed the meat jelly, Lord Third is not on the same side as this kid. Meng Hao's expression was unsightly as he glared at the parrot and meat jelly. That is the demon spirit, he suddenly said, pointing at the parrot. Suddenly, the semi-transparent figure looked over at the parrot. Meng Hao, we're on the same side, bitch. You. The parrot began trembling, having been instantly sent into a fluster. This is wrong, howled the meat jelly. This is immoral. This is going to provoke heavenly tribulation. You. Chapter 517, Valiant Xianxia. At the same time that the parrot and the meat jelly were howling, the translucent figure suddenly opened its mouth in a cold harumph. This time it opened its mouth to emit a sound. The sound reverberated like magic, shaking everything. The parrot and meat jelly were instantly silenced. Everything in the area was completely still and silent. Meng Hao seemed incapable of even breathing. This was not the first time Meng Hao had faced a spirit-severing cultivator. However, this was the first time that he truly faced up against one completely on his own. It was his first time relying only on himself to stand up to the crushing pressure of the spirit-severing stage. Years ago, when he faced Patriarch Reliance, Meng Hao did it as a demon sealer. The only thing Patriarch Reliance did in the end was flee in frustration. Later in Holy Snow City, the legacies of the Frigid Snow clan enabled Meng Hao to fight against a spirit-severing patriarch. In reality, though, that battle was not fought by Meng Hao, but by the legacies of the Frigid Snow and the Agar Wood. This was the first time doing it while truly alone. The pressure felt like heavenly might. His cultivation base rotated rapidly and five-colored light glittered from his body, yet his eyes were instantly shot with blood. A 5 elements totem. Nice idea, said the semi-transparent figure, its voice cool. If you could stabilize it, it might be considered stunning and peerless. Unfortunately, you can't. With your current combination, you could sweep across the nascent soul stage, but you wouldn't be able to stand up to a single blow from me. Very childish. Its tone was not one of arrogance, but rather one of unquestionable strength. It was a strength that spread out into the area and caused cracking sounds to ring out as fissures split the air in all directions. These two trashy neo-demons are in no way demon spirits. If you don't hand it over willingly, then I'll just take it. Although, I do have to say that this physical body of yours is pretty good. Except for the cold harumph from earlier, the translucent figure hadn't opened its mouth again. Its voice continued to echo in Meng Hao's mind. As it finished speaking, it casually lifted up its hand and pointed toward Meng Hao. The finger instantly caused a cold, emotionless feeling to fill the area. A tremor ran through Meng Hao's body, along with an icy coldness. The coldness filled his heart and soul, affecting his 7 emotions and 6 pleasures. It froze all his feelings, transforming him into a state of cold-blooded unfeeling. This transformation almost seemed to be putting him to some sort of special state, a state which was suitable for possession. Enough, squawked the parrot. Spirit severing my ass. This isn't spirit severing, bitches. Meng Hao, even though you tried to con me, if you say the word, I'll run off to find someone to get revenge for you. At the same time, the meat jelly was howling out some complaints. Meng Hao ignored them. His face was calm as he suddenly understood the meaning of the coldness inside of him. So this is the domain. He took a deep breath, and then his eyes began to fill with a bright light. Xianxia, if you don't do something, then you'll have to go by yourself to the primordial demon immortal plane. As soon as his voice echoed out, the eyes of the translucent figure flickered, but its hand did not stop moving. Meng Hao's body continued to fill with coldness. His heart slowly stopped beating, and his emotions turned as cold as ice. This was not a divine ability or a magical technique, but merely the pointing of single finger. Everything seemed calm, but incredible changes were occurring, changes that influenced the laws of reality. Meng Hao felt as if he were bound up, incapable of resisting. It was as if his cultivation base existed in name only and was incapable whatsoever of resisting this surprise onslaught from the domain. The only thing he could do to fight against it would be to employ the Agar Wood for the final time to escape death, or his final bit of dancing sword chi. However, Meng Hao would not act rashly. Besides, it wasn't absolutely necessary for him to use his trump cards when facing up against the spirit-severing stage. That was because he had Xianxia. He wasn't nervous at all. He knew that before going the primordial demon immortal plane, there was someone who was very interested in whether he lived or died. Besides, even if his guess about the situation was wrong, he was still prepared to take other action. The will of the Agar Wood was currently swirling in his mind, ready to awaken. That was another reason why he had been so casual, first about leaving, then about waiting in this spot. At the same time, his eyes slowly started to turn blue. However, in that moment, an annoyed, cutesy snort suddenly filled the air. At the same time, a blooming white lotus appeared in front of Meng Hao. The translucent figure's face fell. Cracking sounds echoed out as fissures filled the air around Meng Hao. They spread out with a boom, transforming into countless fragments which then exploded. Strangest of all, the explosions were actually illusory. This collapse was not a true collapse but rather ghost images. Even as everything shattered, it faded away. Meng Hao took a deep breath as his body returned to its normal state. The coldness, however, remained behind. It seemed that Xianxia, annoyed as she was, wasn't willing to help him dispel it. Meng Hao didn't care. He smiled as the color of his eyes returned to normal. Even as his body returned to normal, he retreated backward. Suddenly, he turned into a green smoke and a black moon. He even employed minor teleportation as he fled off into the distance. The translucent figure frowned and was just moving forward to pursue when it stopped in place. That was because it suddenly found that a grim-faced woman was directly ahead, floating in midair. The woman was incredibly beautiful. She wore a light green gown with peonies embroidered on the sleeves and silver thread in auspicious clouds. She floated gracefully, her garment swirling like a willow in wind. Her delicate skin and immaculate face caused all gazes to focus on her, yet now she ground her teeth in anger. Her beauty contained a desire to kill, her face cold and serious. As she moved forward, the area around her swirled with countless flower petals which swirled like a vortex. They danced about her, some of them coming to fall on her shoulders. The entire scene was incredibly picturesque. This was none other than Xianxia. After the Five Poisons tribe was exterminated, it seemed as if she had gone off on her own. In actuality, for the entire time, she had been keeping tabs on Meng Hao's tribe from off in the distance. She didn't want him to reach an untimely end. If that happened, she would be much less confident about her chances of success in the primordial demon immortal plane. She watched Meng Hao deliver the Crow divinity tribe to the Black Lands and sensed the spirit-severing cultivator's divine clone pursuing him. She knew she had to act. She didn't want to, but Meng Hao had called her out, forcing her hand. Despite her irritation, she had no other options. "Your Excellency, who might you be?" asked the translucent figure with narrowed eyes. This was the second time it had actually opened its mouth. Its voice was ancient and archaic. "I'm the badass bitch who's gonna kick your ass," she said. Her voice sounded like the singing of a lark. Unfortunately, her wording was quite the opposite. The eyes of the translucent figure flickered coldly. It took a step forward, and then raised its right hand and pointed its finger. "You trifling clone," spat Xianxia grumpily. "You see a badass bitch and you don't hightail your ass out of here immediately." Even though she was cursing, it was the kind that didn't make one mad but actually was somewhat enjoyable. Even as she spoke, she waved her sleeve, causing the flower petals circulating around her to suddenly fly toward the semi-transparent figure. Off in the distance, Meng Hao was flying through the air in a wisp of green smoke. He suddenly heard an enormous boom coming from behind him. At the same time, Xianxia's voice suddenly echoed in his ear. "I spent a lot of effort building up this little bit of immortal power, you bastard. Now it's all wasted. Meng Hao, if you stand me up on the day that the primordial demon immortal plane opens, then you're dead." Meng Hao's expression was the same as usual, almost as if he hadn't heard anything. He utilized the bloodburst flash to suddenly shoot off into the distance. He didn't care how Xianxia did it. Even if another spirit-severing patriarch emerged and she had to pay further price, she would have to stop them. Once he escaped the southern region and disappeared into the apocalypse and boundless sea, finding him would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Any spirit-severing patriarch would think twice about coming out after him alone. After all, once they left the Black Lands, the disputes and fighting that could break out in their absence would be too much of a cause for hesitation. Meng Hao had thought through all of this thoroughly. He employed all the speed he could muster to shoot off into the distance. Time passed by. Meng Hao wasn't sure what Xianxia did to intercept any enemies. However, for an entire month, he didn't encounter any pursuit. By this point, having employed the fastest speed he could manage, he had already crossed half of the southern region. Even more violet rain fell. At this point, no sea was visible, but the aroma of seawater could be detected. The violet rain was causing everything to erode. No plants could be seen on the ground below. Life force was being exterminated and spiritual energy had faded. Not a bit was left. Occasionally, he saw bandit tribes below. Eventually, Meng Hao caught sight of South Cleaving Pass. He stopped there for a moment, looking at the pass with a soft sigh. He didn't stay for very long, and during that time, the cultivators that remained in the region didn't even notice him. His body flickered as he shot off toward the north at top speed. During his travels, his cultivation base weakened. The five-colored sky faded. He was no longer at peak mid-nascent soul but early nascent soul. According to Meng Hao's calculations, it wouldn't be long before the five elements dissipated, whereupon his cultivation base would return to the perfect gold core stage. What he needed to do next was to gain enlightenment regarding the Sea of Violet Rain and how to fuse it with the blood totem. Then, he would have his own water-type totem and would be able to tread the path of the five-colored nascent soul. At that time, he would truly be able to make a meteoric rise. Meng Hao took a deep breath, hunching over as he shot forward at top speed. 3 months passed. His cultivation base was now completely back to the perfect cold core stage. He finally left the western desert south region and was in the central region. Here, the only thing visible in all directions was a boundless, endless Violet Sea. This chapter was sponsored by Bren Hillary, Jacob Phillips, Stephanie Anastasia, Anton Edlund, and Mong-Chi Lee. Chapter 518, Sinking to the Heart of the Violet Sea. The sky was dark, and violet rain fell in buckets. The only thing Meng Hao could see in all directions was a vast sea. Waves undulated across its surface, pushed along by a cold wind. His hair drifted up and his clothes rippled as he floated in midair, gazing at the sea. It seemed all life in the world was gone and buried. The only thing left was his loneliness. It floated in his heart for a moment before he shook his head, causing it to fade away. He proceeded at top speed. The parrot followed, occasionally letting out an arrogant squawk. La 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 la, I'm a seagull. The parrot suddenly dove into the water, only to rocket off into the distance. It seemed extremely happy. The vast sea seemed endless. Meng Hao continued on for a few more months until he was deep into what had once been the western desert central region. Here, he could see the very tips of what had once been tall mountains, but were now islands. There were no cultivators and no neodemons. There were only occasional floating corpses. Everything was deathly still. Another 7 days passed. Up ahead appeared a familiar mountain peak, now an island. Meng Hao stopped in midair. After a moment he recognized it. He had passed it when traveling with the Crow divinity tribe. As of now, the mountain itself was buried under the sea. All that was visible now was about 60 meters of its top, which made up the island. This place should do. He didn't proceed any further north. Continuing on would only mean fewer islands and deeper waters. The current water level was what had been midair in the past. He landed on the mountain island and sat cross-legged. He took a deep breath and looked out at the sea. This was the perfect place to practice secluded meditation. It was safe. Because of the exterminating power of the violet rain, it was an apocalypse to western desert cultivators. To Meng Hao, though, it offered no inconvenience. In fact, once he gained enlightenment and produced a violet rain totem, this place would be like his own personal sea. After some time passed, Meng Hao closed his eyes. There was no longer any five-colored glow about him. He was completely of the great circle of the gold core stage. His 5 elements tattoos glittered brightly as he began to meditate. The parrot flew about, occasionally vanishing into the distance, occasionally returning. No matter where it went, it found amusement in everything. At the moment, it was pretending to be a seagull, squawking and crying out in delight. The meat jelly wasn't willing to be outdone. A pop rang out as it also turned into a seagull and rolled its eyes superciliously at the parrot. The 2 buffoons then began to have a contest. Months passed. Meng Hao's cultivation base remained at its peak. Suddenly his eyes opened, and a brilliant glow shone within his pupils. He looked down at the blood totem tattoo on his right index finger. Determination flashed across his face. My final totem. Blood represents life and fights back against all forms of death. This is the part of the water-type totem tattoo which exemplifies life. The violet rain represents death and destroys all life. This is the part of the water-type totem tattoo which exemplifies death. Life and death oppose each other but also exist in a cycle. Without life, how could there be death? And without death, what could serve as a contrast to life? The fusion of life and death, the blending of blood and the violet rain, that will be Meng Hao's great circle water-type totem. As he murmured to himself, his eyes radiated an incredible light. Night fell, rain poured as always. His eyes glowed like lightning. If I truly want to gain enlightenment regarding the violet rain totem that represents death, then I can't just sit here looking at the sea. I need to immerse myself in it so that I can personally experience what death is. In that way, when there is no distinction between myself and the violet sea, when our wills are congruous, then I will have the chance to understand it. When I can control its power, then I can brand myself with a totem tattoo classified as part of the violet sea. Meng Hao felt no hesitation. That was his nature. Once he decided, he did not change his mind. That was especially true since beginning his path of cultivation. He had never looked back but always pressed forward. If one gets in a rut or hesitates to make a decision, then death is not far off. Eyes glittering, Meng Hao stood and looked at the competing parrot and meat jelly. Then he strode forward and jumped into the violet sea. As soon as his body touched the violet seawater, an intense aura of death completely surrounded him. Meng Hao's body trembled as he managed to cross his legs. After sinking down more than 30 meters, he opened his eyes and stopped moving. He had already reached the limit of what he could endure. If he sank any further, the death would become too intense. To this sea, he was something alive, and therefore something it was diametrically opposed to. Meng Hao was incapable of fighting against the entire violet sea. Sinking 30 meters would inspire complete disbelief. The violet sea was a place cultivators simply couldn't enter. Sinking 6 meters for even a short time was like plunging into flames of destruction, let alone 30. An ordinary cultivator who sank 30 meters would perish in about 10 breaths. The death aura here could destroy all life. Meng Hao could sit cross-legged far longer. This stemmed from his perfection. The realm of perfection meant he did not absorb power from heaven and earth. He was his own cycle. His survival far exceeded that of others. Even still, after 20 breaths worth of time, Meng Hao's body began to shake. The will of death congealed around him, growing thicker and thicker. This collision between life and death turned into an extermination, a power that would thoroughly extinguish and bury him. It was like ice water being poured onto a red-hot branding iron. The two were incompatible. Ice and fire opposed to each other created a force. Either the ice water would turn into steam, or the branding iron would experience a complete end. This was extermination. After 30 breaths, the power of extermination grew so intense that Meng Hao opened his eyes and shot up out of the sea. After flying back, he returned to the mountain island, his face pale. He coughed up blood. The collision between his life force and the death aura had transformed into an extermination that was difficult to endure. However, his eyes were now shining brightly. Now I understand. The violet sea apocalypse does not inherently contain the power of extermination. Its primary will is death. When it encounters life, extermination erupts. That extermination comes not from the sea itself, but from its collision with life. The opposition of life and death creates the power of extermination. That will be the true power the great circle of the water-type totem unleashes when complete. It requires time for life and death to create such extermination. The life within my blood totem tattoo needs to coexist with the death of the violet rainwater, not extermination. To truly gain enlightenment, I need to negate the power of extermination. In that way, I can truly understand the will of death. Meng Hao took a deep breath and sat back down cross-legged. After 3 days, he was fully recovered. When he opened his eyes, they shone brightly. After a moment of contemplation, he strode forward and dropped into the seawater. He descended to 30 meters and crossed his legs, experiencing the extermination that came with it. A year passed in the blink of an eye. During that year, Meng Hao saw no cultivators or other life. He seemed the only person alive in the world. Negating the power of extermination was difficult. Even sustained by the realm of perfection, it was taxing. He would not use his blood totem unless absolutely necessary. If he did, the gap between life and death within the violet sea would widen, letting extermination rush in and threaten to wipe him away. I cannot use life to understand death. To understand death, I must truly die. Meng Hao could now descend nearly 100 meters into the violet sea and stay there for 170 breaths before returning to the surface. He had made progress that year, but was still far from understanding the violet rain. This death is not blind perishing. I must approach it methodically. I need to slowly decrease my life force under the power of extermination, then make a complete reversal. By surviving only my own death aura, uninfluenced by the exterminating will, I can truly experience the violet sea's death. After reaching this enlightenment, Meng Hao rested for a few days, then entered the violet sea to meditate cross-legged. More time passed, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. 10 years. Meng Hao sat cross-legged more than 600 meters beneath the violet sea, motionless as death. An aura of death circulated around him. Occasionally extermination would explode outward, but it was subdued, much weaker than it had been 10 years ago. A month passed. Meng Hao's eyes suddenly opened. The power of extermination around him grew incredibly intense. Before it could explode, he shot up from the violet sea. "Still not enough," he murmured. "When I can sit on the seafloor permanently, I will comprehend the truth of the violet sea." During the 10-year period, his cultivation base had hardly changed. However, his entire body and aura had undergone earth-shaking transformation. He was taller and more slender, with something demonic in his scholarly bearing and less of the Confucian. His life force was reduced, his deathly aura increased. His skin was bright and clear, his features more handsome, even demonic. After 10 years, violet rain still fell, but the sea had not grown deeper. The island still existed. By now, the western desert south region had become part of the sea. The entire western desert was covered by seawater. Any cultivators unable to enter the Black Lands were now skeletons buried by the violet sea. They were like the bridge slaves in the bridge ruins, specters who occasionally appeared on the surface. Sometimes entire tribes would appear, drifting about, taking any life force. They were emissaries of the violet sea. Meng Hao had encountered such specters several times over the 10 years. As he burst from the violet sea now, he saw several hundred specters off in the distance, drifting across the surface with vacant looks. As soon as Meng Hao appeared, they stopped and looked over. Chapter 519. Within the sea, time is forgot. The specters looked at Meng Hao and he looked back. They appeared confused. His expression remained normal. However, he watched closely to see how they would react. After a moment, a towering death aura rose up from them. Their bodies flashed into motion as they shot toward Meng Hao. He frowned, then sighed. As the specters neared, he pointed with his right hand, causing a bloody light to burst forth. Within it was an intense life force that shot forward and slammed into the specters in a blink. An exterminating will exploded, causing everything to shake. A sound like thunder echoed as the specters' bodies collapsed into pieces, dead in soul and body. This exterminating will was created when the will of life touched an aura of death. 10 years ago, Meng Hao could never have done this. Now, after 10 years of enlightenment, he understood how to produce extermination, though he could not fully reverse his life force into death aura. If these violet sea specters can sense my life force, then there's no need to even mention the sea itself. He shook his head. Over the past 10 years, as his enlightenment deepened, he found that the specters always looked puzzled when encountering him. It showed he was making progress. Such a phenomenon also indicates I've picked the correct path. He looked at the sky, lost in thought. He had no idea where the parrot and meat jelly had gone. Over the past 10 years they had frolicked and played. They would often disappear without a trace for half a year or more. Considering their usual vices, Meng Hao wasn't worried for their safety. There was nothing in the area that had fur or feathers, so no matter what stories they made up, they actually couldn't accomplish much. Meng Hao rested a few more days before sinking again into the violet sea. Meng Hao's focus on cultivation had caused him to miscalculate regarding the parrot and meat jelly. While it was true that there was nothing in the area that had fur or feathers, well, the Black Lands was another story. The parrot and meat jelly had gotten tired of the ocean years ago and had secretly left and flown back to the Black Lands. After entering, they immediately caused a violent commotion that eventually became a legend. Another 10 years passed. Meng Hao had already spent more than 20 years understanding the violet rain. By now, he could submerge nearly 3,000 meters and sit cross-legged for several months. His life force was currently incredibly weak. Were it anyone else, such a lack of life force would mean they weren't alive at all. Meng Hao was different, though. Although his life force was weak, his thick death aura actually became something like a different type of life. Such life was similar to that of the specters, except that it possessed a fleshly body and a soul. As his life force weakened, the extermination power in the seawater was reduced, and the will to expel him weakened as well. Another 10 years passed. After spending 30 years, half a 60-year cycle, seeking enlightenment of the violet rain, he could finally sink to the very bottom of the sea. He could now step onto what had once been the great lands of the western desert. On the seafloor, Meng Hao felt pervasive, indescribable auras of death surrounding him. They were thick and accompanied by numerous specters. When these specters saw Meng Hao, though, they completely ignored him and would simply pass on, sometimes drifting directly through his body. The life force in Meng Hao's body had already been suppressed almost completely. The only thing left was a tiny sliver upon which his entire life hung. His body was now filled with an abundant aura of death, causing his skin to turn an ashen white, almost the exact same color as a corpse. He sat cross-legged on the seafloor, what had once been the surface of the western desert. Year after year passed. To understand the violet rain, one must become the violet rain. Only in such a manner could enlightenment be gained. After 30 years of attempts, Meng Hao was finally able to achieve some success. That sliver of life force that sustained the fire of his life was now surrounded by an aura of death. However, it was not exterminated. The surrounding will of extermination was now incredibly weak. Meng Hao was now finally able to understand what it felt like to die within the violet rain. He sat cross-legged, making no attempt to leave the violet sea. Another 10 years passed. Meng Hao's quest to form his water-type totem had lasted 40 years. To a mortal, that's half a lifetime. To cultivators, though, 40 years could not be considered short, but neither could it be considered very long. After 40 years, the rainfall in the western desert was no longer a downpour, it was letting up. According to records, the rain would last 100 years at most. Unfortunately, even though the rain would cease to fall after 100 years, the spiritual energy would not be restored. The violet sea would still be like a restricted area for cultivators. It would be possible to fly in midair above the waters, but it was impossible to step a single foot into the sea. Furthermore, the countless western desert cultivators who died before reaching the Black Lands became specters filling the violet sea. Any living thing they encountered provoked extreme grievance, spurring instant attacks to exterminate all life. Even still, these specters were actually something that cultivators could use. Because they were congealed out of an aura of death, they could be sealed. Some of the more powerful of the specters could even be refined into death aura crystals. Such crystals could be used when practicing cultivation to stimulate the latent power of the body. During those 40 years, many upheavals rocked the Black Lands. The Heavenly Court Alliance, however, remained the most powerful force. In addition to the Heavenly Court Alliance, 6 other powerful forces gradually rose up. These were of course the great tribes who had spirit-severing patriarchs. Actually, one of them, the 6th, did not have a spirit-severing patriarch. The name of this force was the Golden Crow Black Dragon Clan. This clan was a combination of the Crow Divinity Tribe and the Black Dragon Tribe. In terms of the power structure, the Golden Crow Clan was the primary power, the Black Dragon Tribe the secondary, and the Church of the Golden Light was tertiary. Together, they formed a powerful clan. Although they had no spirit-severing patriarch, they did have 800,000 neo-demons. As such, the Golden Crow Black Dragon Clan possessed such fearsome power that no one dared to look down upon them. This was especially true of their spell formation. Over 40 years, many spied on them but all abandoned thoughts of attacking the clan. The clan possessed the Thorn Rampart Vine. Any enemy below spirit-severing would be helpless against it. A spirit-severing expert might handle the Thorn Rampart, but 800,000 frenzied neo-demons was something no tribe would dare test. This balance allowed the Golden Crow Black Dragon Clan not only to exist, but to rise to power. Their totemic sacred ancients grew substantially. With the Outlander beast as a guard, the Golden Crow Black Dragon Clan was a force to be reckoned with. This was even more the case when some of the neo-demons from the horde of 800,000 gradually grew to the point of becoming totemic sacred ancients. 30 years ago, Big Harry reached level 11 and became a totemic sacred ancient. On that day, all neo-demons in the Black Lands could sense a powerful demonic chi which spread out thickly in all directions from the Golden Crow clan. After another 10 years, the red crocodile and the enormous lizard successively became totemic sacred ancients. As for the crows, mosquitoes, and some of the various other neo-demons, they grew like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. All of them reached level 11 and became totemic sacred ancients. Under their guardianship, the Golden Crow Black Dragon Clan truly was worthy to be called powerful. They became one of the 6 greatest powers in the Black Lands underneath the Heavenly Court Alliance. 10 years ago, the parrot and the meat jelly used some unknown method to escape the detection of spirit-severing divine sense and re-enter the Black Lands. They instantly began to sow chaos. Vast numbers of neo-demons met with disaster. Save for the Golden Crow Black Dragon Clan, neo-demons from any tribe sensing their aura would instantly wail and flee. No matter what any Dragoneer did to try to control them, they were powerless to block them in any way. their neo-demons would quickly flee, and the lonely Dragoneer would be left hovering alone in midair, trembling. The Bane of Dragoneers was a name that quickly rose to prominence in the Black Lands. During those 40 years, the southern domain remained cautious of the Black Lands, yet disciples from its sects often had dealings with the six great powers. Though seemingly peaceful on the surface, both sides remained vigilant. The sect with whom the Golden Crow Black Dragon clan had the most dealings with was the Violet Fate sect. The reason for this was that legends began to spread of what had happened 40 years ago. The Western Desert cultivators soon learned that the totemic sacred ancient who led the Crow divinity tribe out of the north, Meng Hao, was once a disciple of the Violet Fate sect. He was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron of the southern domain, completely illustrious and famous. As soon as word of this began to spread, it caused a huge stir. After all, everyone who had seen Meng Hao combine the 5 elements outside Blackgate Fort had been thoroughly shaken. However, the stories about Meng Hao gradually became legends of the past. For 40 years, no one had heard from him. All they knew was that he had disappeared into the depths of the former Western Desert. As the Violet Sea spread, many believed Meng Hao had perished. His choice to avoid the Black Lands and venture into the Violet Sea was attributed to his enmity with the Jai clan. The enmity between Meng Hao and the Jai clan quickly became common knowledge. During the 40 years, the lands of South Heaven changed quite a bit. The Meng Hao who so many people were beginning to forget was currently sitting at the bottom of the Violet Sea, attempting to gain enlightenment regarding the will of death. Meanwhile, also at the bottom of the sea, far away from Meng Hao in what had once been the Western Desert North region, in the location of what had once been the home of the Crow divinity tribe, another young man in a black robe sat cross-legged on the ocean floor. Occasionally he would open his eyes, and they would glow with a red light. His appearance resembled Meng Hao's, yet he seemed far more cold and sinister. He wore a black robe, a bat mark on his forehead. Cross-legged he looked like a black bat. 7 spirits managed to slip through to the holy barriers of the heavens. They transformed into 7 ancient true spirits. After tens of thousands of years passed, their spirit wills ascended, and their spirit bodies transformed into 7 immortal murdering swords. Meng Hao, by what right of virtue do you possess 4 of them? The true spirits are not visible in the world. We discarnate spirits are the real power. By recapturing the spirit bodies, we can then have the ability to tread the path of the true spirit. The eyes of the black-robed youth glittered. His left eye actually had no eyeball, but instead was a vortex. Within the vortex was a corpse which was half human and half beast. This was the exact same bizarre corpse from which Meng Hao had acquired the immortal murdering sword years ago, within the Crow divinity tribe's holy land. Now that corpse was nourishment for the black-robed youth. By consuming it, the black bat had transmogrified itself. The black bat disappeared in chapter 477. It was the bat Meng Hao won in his early days in the Crow Scout tribe that had a wooden sword stuck inside of it. This chapter was sponsored by Sophocles Skortsanida. Chapter 520. Endless Cold Knows No Years. 40 years flashed by. There were still people who remembered Meng Hao, but most people only recalled a scene in which someone brought 800,000 neo-demons through Blackgate Fort. Most had forgotten what he looked like. Meng Hao was slowly forgotten. In truth, it was the same even with him. Not even his shadow was seen upon the Western Desert Violet Sea. He had been submerged at the bottom of the sea for years now. He sat cross-legged on what had once been the land of the Western Desert, silent and unmoving for a long time. He didn't move or breathe. There were no signs of life. He sat in darkness, secluded in meditation. The will of extermination weakened, becoming nearly undetectable. At the same time, the scant life force in Meng Hao's body dwindled to a single strand, the last thing keeping him alive. 20 more years passed in this manner. A full 60-year cycle had elapsed since Meng Hao began seeking enlightenment of the Violet Sea. More people forgot about him. Even in the Golden Crow Black Dragon clan, those who joined or were born during that time saw his story as exaggerated legend. Only those who'd associated with him years ago remembered otherwise. Friction developed between the Black Dragon and Golden Crow tribes. However, Subai forcefully suppressed these tensions and smoothed out conflicts. It was understandable considering that the two tribes did not have a common origin. They had been forced together because of the pressures of the outside world. The Golden Crow tribe occupied a position of leadership above the Black Dragon tribe. Although things seemed as peaceful as the waters of a windless sea, in reality, the wild hearts of the Black Dragon tribe were awakening. More years passed. One day, Meng Hao's eyes snapped open in the depths of the sea, shining with brilliant light. After a long time, his expression grew weaker. So many years, he murmured softly to himself, looking around at the world of the pitch-black seafloor. Unfortunately, I still haven't thoroughly grasped the meaning of the violet sea's death will. The will of extermination is weak but still there. Until it completely vanishes, I will be separated from the violet sea, incapable of fusing together with it. Although there is only a tiny bit of life force left in me, it is still there. As such, the extermination power will not disappear. Don't tell me that I really have to die. He shook his head as he looked out thoughtfully at the blackness around him. Occasionally, specters would appear. During the more than 60 years that had passed, more and more specters had begun to awaken and roam about in the seawater. They floated past without attacking, as if they couldn't see him or perhaps sensed he was like them, completely lacking life. Images filled his mind. His parents from childhood, himself reading by the window, the disappointment of failed imperial exams, the moment on Mount Daching when his life changed. The Reliance sect, the Blood Immortal Legacy, the Violet Fate sect, the Black Lands, all the way to the Western Desert. Endless memories flashed through him. Almost 100 years had passed since he'd met Su Qing on Mount Daching. 100 years had flowed by so quickly he barely had time to recall them. An entire mortal lifetime had passed. Gradually, his life coalesced before him. He saw many figures, enemies and friends alike, and the karma threads connecting him to all of them became visible. After a while, he smiled, determination shining through. He had chosen this path and would unflinchingly follow it to the end. When risks are taken, results are death or incredible rewards. Meng Hao closed his eyes. In that instant, he crushed his last strand of life force. There can be no growth without destruction. Without death, how can there be new life? As the life force vanished, Meng Hao's body filled with a soundless roar. His life disappeared. The flame of life within him was snuffed out. He was dead. True death, no life force, consciousness, aura, or perception, as if buried deep in the violet sea. At death's moment, the will of extermination that had blocked his fusion with the violet sea vanished without trace. The blockage's removal seemed to grant approval. He was now like the violet sea, a will of death. Without the blockage, the dense death aura of the violet sea enveloped him, pouring in and circulating through his body in cyclical fashion. Meng Hao had no consciousness. He'd been severed from the world, had nothing to do with it anymore. He forgot it, it forgot him. The only thing that remembered Meng Hao was the dense death will of the violet sea. It continued to congeal around him, to pour into his body. Finally, one day, his pale flesh became completely gray and filled with an aura of death. He was now one with the violet sea. All his parts fused with the violet sea. He had become the violet sea. However, the violet sea had not become him yet. Time passed. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, eventually 30 years passed. Around 90 years had elapsed since he began seeking enlightenment of the violet rain. The violet rain, which had fallen unceasingly for nearly 100 years, seemed on the verge of ceasing. Signs grew more apparent. After a year, the violet rain finally stopped. The sky remained overcast, but rain ceased to fall. Not a complete end. Occasionally rain still fell, but the violet rainfall had largely passed. When the violet rain stopped falling, there was something different about the violet sea of the western desert. In that moment, all of the specters which had been floating about above and below the sea suddenly stopped. Everything became silent. Their faces became more blank, as if listening respectfully. That period of listening lasted for 3 months. After the 3 months, everything returned to normal. However, there was something different about this violet sea, something that no one could sense. Within the sea, each swell contained a will. That will belong to Meng Hao. Meng Hao wasn't aware. He didn't know when he'd awakened, didn't remember who he was, nor any of his memories. All he remembered, he had awakened and become the violet sea. He was the violet sea. The violet sea was also him. Confused, he looked around. Time seemed not to have passed. He saw rain stop until not a drop remained. He saw a young, black-robed man sitting cross-legged in the depths. When he saw the young man, they sensed each other. Disbelief and astonishment flashed across the man's face. His body trembled as if cold. For reasons Meng Hao didn't understand, the young man transformed into a black bat and fled in terror. Whenever Meng Hao noticed him, he trembled with terror and fled at top speed. Meng Hao didn't understand. He turned his attention to examining the world around him, confused. Soon, cultivators began arriving above the sea to hunt specters. He saw everything clearly. He also saw some cultivators fall into the sea and perish. Meng Hao watched everything with confusion. More and more cultivators arrived. They were careful not to touch the seawater. By using their divine abilities and magical techniques, they were able to find some of the mountain islands that had not been completely submerged. They began to construct cities around the peaks, above the seawater. They called them cities, but they were really more like outposts. Soon, 10 outposts were constructed above the Violet Sea. Meng Hao observed them. At one point, a strand of wool rose, and huge waves suddenly submerged an outpost being built. The outposts drew even more cultivators to cautiously hunt specters. After observing, Meng Hao grew bored. He fell silent as time passed again, though he didn't know how much. Undisturbed, he could exist like this for 10,000 years. Then the Violet Sea would vanish, his consciousness would return to his body, and he would be reborn. Meng Hao didn't know that what he was experiencing, although it seemed as if it were enlightenment, was actually something that in ancient times was called demonic transmigration. The fleshly body was abandoned, as well as the cultivation base. Consciousness was shattered and then reawakened in a new form of life. Everything was forgotten as one became a greater demon of heaven and earth. Everything about the past was completely cleaved away. Within the sea, time is forgotten. Endless coldness knows no years. Meng Hao saw many people. One of them was an old man wearing a long white robe. His body emanated a medicinal aroma, and he had the bearing of a transcendent being. On one day of one particular year, he appeared above the Violet Sea. He stared down blankly at the waters, and Meng Hao stared blankly up at him. There was something familiar about this man. He floated there silently in midair, looking down at the sea. 3 months passed. Finally, the man let out a soft sigh. "Apprentice, you are in the midst of demonic transmigration." He shook his head, then turned and left, clearly filled with complex emotions. Meng Hao's corpse sat on the sea floor, cross-legged. In that moment he trembled a bit. He now felt even more confused. Chapter 521, When the Tear Fell into the Sea. Meng Hao saw many familiar people appear, yet couldn't quite remember them. Subai came, as did Chen Fan Fatty and Big Harry. By now, Big Harry was a totemic sacred ancient. However, he was only level 11, not level 12. Nor had his cultivation base reached that legendary realm of heavenly neo-demons similar to the spirit severing stage. Instead, he was at the great circle of the nascent soul stage. In the great lands of the Western Desert, there are a total of 12 levels of neo-demon growth. According to historical records, the peak was generally considered to be level 11 neo-demons who were similar to the spirit severing stage. Level 12 neo-demons, also called totems, were comparable to the Tao-seeking stage. Neo-demons like that had only existed during the golden age of the Western Desert. The true power of a totemic sacred ancient had almost everything to do with the faith that was exercised in it. However, what goes up must come down. That was all in the past. After the apocalypse hit the Western Desert, even great tribes with spirit-severing patriarchs could not compare to how they had been before, during the heyday of the Western Desert. Therefore, level 11 heavenly neo-demons were similar to the great circle of the nascent soul stage. Level 12 were similar to spirit severing and possessed the power to bestow totems. Most Western Desert cultivators were not even aware of this. Only tribal greatfathers and high priests understood the matter thoroughly. It was the same with Meng Hao in his role as totemic sacred ancient. With more tribe members, there was more faith power, which allowed him to grow stronger. When the Western Desert apocalypse came, life force was exterminated. Neo-demons were affected, and even more so, totemic sacred ancients. All totemic sacred ancients were weakened severely. Thankfully, Meng Hao had nourished Big Harry and the others using demonic qi. Because of this, Big Harry and the other totemic sacred ancients of the Golden Crow Black Dragon clan developed the ability to bestow totems earlier than usual. They were able to do so at level 11. Big Harry stayed in the Violet Sea for a time, yipping and calling as he searched for Meng Hao. Finding nothing, he left sadly. One day, an old man arrived. His face was grim, his cultivation base unclear, but he was surrounded by killing intent and an ancient aura that made Meng Hao's cultivation base tremble. The man stared at the sea for a long time, frowned, gave a cold laugh and left. That man was none other than the 10th patriarch of the Wang clan. Many people came. One day, a beautiful woman in red appeared, though her face was filled with a frown. She looked down at the Violet Sea, directly above where Meng Hao sat cross-legged. I've been waiting for you for years only to find out that you're here, in the midst of demonic transmigration. Instead of working hard at being a cultivator, you decide to become a demon. What the hell? Are you crazy, you moron? Are you a man or not? First you take advantage of me and then just go on your merry way. How irresponsible could you be? What the hell am I gonna do in 10 years? What the hell is a lone badass bitch gonna do by herself in the primordial demon immortal plane? There was nothing the red-robed woman could do other than grind her teeth. A few days later, she left angrily, clearly incredibly frustrated. Days later, a woman in a green garment arrived, pretty and emanating a medicinal aura. She hovered for a long time, looking out at the sea. "Meng Hao, where are you?" she said softly. After a long time, she sighed and prepared to leave. Before departing, she threw a medicinal pill into the sea, one she'd personally concocted, representing her Tao of alchemy at its peak. The pill fell into the water and dissolved. Suddenly, Meng Hao felt something tugging at his heart. A tremor ran through his corpse, which was still sitting cross-legged on the seafloor. One dim morning, a white-robed woman flew across the sea from the black lands, cold and neither angry nor happy. She hovered in midair, looking around, then slowly looked down at the violet seawater. She didn't know she was looking at Meng Hao himself. Meng Hao couldn't grasp that the woman he saw was Su Qing. Being separated is not the most helpless feeling. Worse is standing before the person you miss but being unable to see them. For the first time, Meng Hao's emotions trembled, and the violet sea trembled with him. The calm waters erupted in huge waves. Su Qing stared at the sea for an entire year. She didn't leave but stayed on a mountain island. Each day she looked out, each day Meng Hao looked back. Throughout, Meng Hao struggled to remember who she was. Unaware, Su Qing did know Meng Hao had made the surrounding area a zone where no life was permitted. No Western desert cultivator could enter. It became a world belonging only to them. A year later, Su Qing's jade slip began glowing brightly, flickering faster. She rose to her feet, looked out at the sea, and turned to leave. As she turned, a teardrop fell from her eye into the sea. The teardrop merged with the seawater. Chu Yuyan left a medicinal pill. Su Qing left a tear. The pill caused Meng Hao to tremble. The tear caused the violet sea to explode with tsunami waves. Who was she? Meng Hao asked. As he did, the waves grew more shocking, rolling across the entire sea and causing all the Black Land's cultivators to tremble. Why am I in such pain? What have I forgotten? Who was that woman? Who were all those people? As Meng Hao murmured to himself, storm winds raged and huge waves battered the surface of the sea. Roaring filled the air. As he agonized, Meng Hao let out a soundless roar. The teardrop descended, and seawater parted like a path. It proceeded unobstructed, guided through darkness toward Meng Hao's corpse. The tear landed on his pale lips and seeped into his mouth, bitter and transformative. The tear spread through him and his corpse suddenly moved. An aura exploded from him. As it did, the tsunami waves on the sea grew, even more astonishing. After a long time, his eyes suddenly opened. A roaring sound filled his mind. Countless memories and images poured in, restoring him. Death is not the end of life, but rather the beginning. I am Meng Hao. After a moment, he looked out at the seafloor, though his eyes showed the sky above the ocean's surface. He was awake, he was enlightened. In his enlightenment, he realized 10 years had passed since the tear fell. 150 years had passed since he began seeking enlightenment of the violet sea. Without the tear, Meng Hao would have continued his demonic transmigration and awakened as a greater demon 10,000 years later. The world would lose a cultivator, the demon sealer legacy would be severed, and a new demon would be born. The instant he woke up, the great waves on the surface of the violet sea calmed. All of the specters sank down into the seawater, vanishing from the world above. The entire violet sea became deathly quiet. In the depths, Meng Hao's life force burned vigorously. After days, he surpassed his previous peak. Before, such intensity would have provoked extermination, but now the violet sea accepted him. That was because Meng Hao was the violet sea, and in many ways the violet sea was Meng Hao. He slowly lifted up his right hand. As he did, the entire violet sea quietly sank down a full 30 meters. The violet sea sank 30 meters, revealing more islands. All the Black Land's cultivators were shocked. Groups came to investigate, but none could understand why the sea had sunk. The reason? That seawater had formed a violet water character on Meng Hao's hand. This mark signified that Meng Hao could control the power of death of the Violet Sea. This was his water-type totem tattoo. As he looked down at his hand, Meng Hao waved it, causing the seawater that surrounded him to part, creating an opening 300 meters wide. Within that opening, no water existed. A bloody light sparkled on his index finger, representing the blood totem's life force. A ghost image of the blood totem appeared on his hand and began fusing with the death totem. As they fused, as the ghost images sprang up, Meng Hao's body suddenly shook. Blood represents life. The Violet Sea represents death. When life and death collide, that is extermination. When life and death mix together, it is the source of all life. This is my fifth element, water. It represents life and also represents death. It is a source of extermination and also a source of life. My water-type totem will form my first nascent soul. Its color is a combination of violet and blood. It is my fifth element, water, my blood-violet nascent soul. His eyes shone with a strange light as he suddenly clenched his right fist. The water-type totem tattoo disappeared. It didn't dissipate, but rather sank down into Meng Hao's body, branding itself onto his perfect gold core. At the same time, Meng Hao's eyes flickered with determination. As of this moment, he suddenly looked, not like a cultivator but like an alchemist. As of this moment, he was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. My body is the pill furnace, he murmured. His blood began to circulate rapidly. Tremors ran through his flesh, making it seem as if he truly had become a great furnace of heaven and earth. Inside of him there was no flame but rather his life force. Using his life to concoct pills, and using alchemy to concoct a nascent soul, he would create his own 5-colored nascent soul. My heart is the pill formula. He placed his hands onto his knees and closed his eyes. Within his heart existed a method that had never been used before, and probably never would again, to begin his cultivation-based breakthrough. This was a way to acquire a perfect nascent soul, even though he had never been told the true method for forming such a nascent soul. This was Meng Hao's pill formula. Concoct a 5-colored nascent soul. The first step is to make not 1 but 5 nascent souls. His body filled with roaring as he used pill concocting techniques to refine his own body. Using his body as the pill furnace and his heart as the formula, he would concoct a nascent soul. This had never occurred before Meng Hao. It was his own path, his own cultivation method, a road reaching the peak of perfection. Time passed. Suddenly, cracking sounds could be heard from his perfect gold core. Fissures appeared. Moments later, his perfect gold core suddenly exploded, transforming into a primordial chi vortex. Suddenly, a blood-violet glow could be seen. This chapter was sponsored by Sophocles Scortzinita. Within the chi vortex, Meng Hao's body radiated blood-violet light. The light began to congeal into a vague outline. The outline swirled continuously. The violet sea surged around him, turning into a vortex that grew until the entire western desert violet sea was affected. Roaring filled the air. All cultivators on the Violet Sea were instantly astonished. In their shock, they had no way to even guess what was causing this phenomenon. Meng Hao's eyes were closed at the moment. The blood-violet light continued to radiate out intensely. The interlocking beams of light that were forming the outline began to grow more and more clear. Soon it was obvious that the outline, astonishingly, it was congealing into the shape of a small person. This person looked exactly like Meng Hao, only much smaller. 7 inches tall, completely transparent, it emanated a blood-violet glow and an incredible aura. The aura far exceeded that of any other nascent soul cultivator. It was even comparable to the flawless nascent souls of cultivators from great sects. Upon its appearance, the nascent soul's expression was one of confusion. However, it quickly came to its senses and stretched out its arms and legs. Meng Hao's heart began to pound as the power of an early nascent soul cultivation base suddenly exploded out within him. Back at Blackgate Fort, he had temporarily possessed a similar but unstable cultivation base. This time it was permanent and completely of his own. Furthermore, although this was still the early nascent soul stage, in terms of aura, the power was even more intense. This was a blood-violet nascent soul. As soon as the nascent soul appeared, it flew out from Meng Hao's body to float in the air in front of him. Its eyes glittered as it sat cross-legged in midair, its body radiating blood-violet light up into the sky. In the cultivation world of South Heaven, most nascent soul cultivators cultivated a single nascent soul as the focus of their path. Only a few almighty practitioners with special techniques or incredible bases possessed multiple nascent souls. Such people were the strongest of the strong, leaving indelible marks on history. As of this moment, Meng Hao was taking his first steps down just such a path. The appearance of his blood-violet nascent soul caused a red glow to suddenly appear in Meng Hao's eyes. He took a deep breath, then closed his eyes. By now, his perfect gold core was completely shattered and had turned into a vortex that spun constantly and emanated a primordial aura. Suddenly, Meng Hao's metal-type totem tattoo began to flicker and then slowly fade away. It sunk down into his body, transforming into a golden light which then fused into the primordial vortex. Metal-type power from the spirit of the golden crow and unbreakable metal, murmured Meng Hao. Using my pill concocting methods, I will use this to concoct Meng Hao's second nascent soul. Using his body as the pill furnace and his heart as the pill formula, he once again began to concoct a nascent soul. Moments later, a rumbling sound emanated out from his body. Thankfully, Meng Hao was at the bottom of a sea. Were he not, the sound would have echoed out far into the distance. Despite being on the seafloor, it still caused huge waves to suddenly explode out in all directions. At the same time, the primordial vortex within Meng Hao emanated an intense golden light, which radiated out through his skin, making him look like a statue of gold. Next, an outline became visible within that golden light. It grew clearer and clearer as it transformed into a small person that looked exactly like the blood-violet nascent soul. It was 7 inches tall, completely transparent, and had a blank expression on its face. It looked exactly like the blood-violet nascent soul, except that this second nascent soul emanated a golden glow. Its bearing was one of righteousness and utter holiness. After the space of a few breaths, the tiny golden figure's eyes suddenly flashed with clearness. It stretched its body, causing golden light to explode out along with incredible power. Meng Hao's cultivation base suddenly exploded with power. It shot upward, climbing up to the peak of the early nascent soul stage, just a tiny step away from the mid-nascent soul stage. The tiny golden figure was the second of Meng Hao's nascent souls, a 5-elements metal nascent soul. The nascent soul shot out from Meng Hao, flying in a different direction to face the first. An incredible aura rippled out in all directions. Meng Hao's cultivation base undulated with incredible intensity. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath as the wood-type totem tattoo on his forehead began to fade away. Metal and water have been concocted into nascent souls, he murmured to himself. Now it's time for wood. The greenwood tree from the 9th sea will become my 3rd nascent soul. Wood nascent soul. With this nascent soul, my progress down the path of the 5-colored nascent soul will be almost complete. Meng Hao focused all of his mind and heart on the chi vortex inside of him. Using his spiritual sense like his own hands, he again began to concoct a nascent soul. It only took moments before the primordial chi vortex within him to begin to shine with a green light. It seemed as if lightning were dancing about within it. Incredible roaring sounds emanated out that seemed to contain life itself within them. It became life force, an overwhelming life force that seemed to stem from the beginning of all creation. At the same time, a beam of green light shot out from within the primordial vortex. The beam of light swirled around to form an outline of 4 limbs and a head. Facial features emerged. The eyes suddenly snapped open and began to shine with a blinding green light. Meng Hao's wood nascent soul suddenly appeared. The moment that the wood nascent soul appeared, Meng Hao's cultivation base shot up, breaking out from the early nascent soul stage and entering fully into the mid-nascent soul stage. 3 nascent souls. Any outsider would be flabbergasted. From ancient times, cultivators with 3 nascent souls were exceedingly rare, perhaps only 10 throughout history. Right now, Meng Hao had successfully concocted a 3rd nascent soul. However, in terms of the path of concocting a 5-colored nascent soul, the first step wasn't even fully complete. From this, it could be seen that Meng Hao's nascent soul concocting method was truly something completely new. His Grandmaster's status in the Tao of Alchemy allowed him to use pill concocting techniques to form nascent souls. Most importantly was his foundation, Great Circle Qi Condensation, 10 perfect Tao pillars and a perfect gold core, completely unique in South Heaven. This base sustained the primordial vortex within him, allowing his sequential nascent soul concoction. Without such a foundation, no one else could accomplish this. He was now about to enter a place that throughout the history of the great lands of South Heaven, only a few nascent soul experts had ever entered. Throughout countless years and among endless chosen and heroes, this was the most nascent souls anyone had ever possessed. 4 nascent souls. Throughout innumerable years, only 3 people had ever possessed 4 nascent souls. As of now, that number would be increased to 4. East Pill ever-burning flame, murmured Meng Hao, which is just like the eternity of my Tao of alchemy and my ever-burning heart. I will congeal the fire of the 5 elements of heaven and earth. This fire represents my Tao of alchemy and the determination with which I practice cultivation. This fire will be used to concoct my 4th nascent soul. Fire nascent soul. His voice was soft, but filled with unhesitating decisiveness that could chop nails and sever iron. At the same time as he had spoken, the wood nascent soul flew out to sit cross-legged in the air with the water and metal nascent souls. 3 nascent souls circled through the air around Meng Hao. Suddenly, a yellow light began to shine out from Meng Hao's fire-type totem tattoo as it slowly vanished. It also merged into the primordial vortex. A sea of fire appeared within Meng Hao, completely enveloping the primordial vortex. It spread out from within him to fill the entire area. He was completely surrounded by a sea of fire. Within the flames, the chi vortex spun as a band of fire shot out. It quickly transformed into a small person, 7 inches tall. This was Meng Hao's 5 elements fire nascent soul. As soon as it appeared, the flames in the area fell in on themselves, rippling back into Meng Hao and congealing onto the body of the fire nascent soul. It was at this point that the nascent soul's eyes opened. When that happened, Meng Hao's cultivation base exploded upward, climbing all the way to the peak of the mid-nascent soul stage. Back at Blackgate Fort, when he first combined the 5 elements, his cultivation base had climbed up to the peak of the mid-nascent soul stage. Now, with only 4 nascent souls, he had already reached the same level he had before when combining the 5 elements. Meng Hao took a deep breath. His eyes glittered as the fire nascent soul flew out to join the other 3 nascent souls that floated around his head. They were now formed into a 4-sided spell formation. The exact center of that spell formation was none other than Meng Hao. The essence of the power of the Frost Soil Demon Emperor was the Frost Soil, which existed even before primordial times at the beginning of everything. That essence will form my 5th-nascent soul, Earth nascent soul. He took a deep breath. Filled with unprecedented confidence, he closed his eyes once more. His final totem tattoo vanished and then merged into the chi vortex within him. Time passed. Moments later, an intensely cold aura began to emanate out from Meng Hao to fill the area. Cracking sounds could be heard as the violet sea around him was frozen. Meng Hao's cultivation base exploded up again. Now, he was no longer at the peak of the mid-nascent soul stage, but rather had broken through into the late-nascent soul stage. His hair whipped about and his clothing rippled. At the same time, an intense howling sound could be heard coming from within him. A 7-inch-tall person floated up out of the top of his head. Its expression was one of solemnity, and it radiated a frigid aura just like that of frost soil. This was Meng Hao's 5-element Earth nascent soul. The 5 elements Earth nascent soul floated out. As of now, Meng Hao was surrounded by 5 nascent souls: metal, wood, water, fire, earth. His 5 elements nascent souls were finally complete. The first step of the 5-colored nascent soul was now finished. As of this moment, Meng Hao had reached an unprecedented point along the path of the nascent soul stage in the lands of South Heaven. There was no one more powerful than him. His spiritual sense expanded dramatically, 300, 3,000, 15,000 meters, reaching 27,000 meters. This was no longer spiritual sense but divine sense, the specialty of nascent soul cultivators. An ordinary late nascent soul cultivator possessed divine sense of 21,000 meters. The spirit's severing boundary was 30,000. Yet Meng Hao's divine sense already reached 27,000. Meng Hao looked up at the 5 nascent souls hovering around his head. Right now, the primordial chi vortex formed from his perfect gold core was greatly reduced. However, from the look of it, it seemed sufficient to actually concoct a 6th nascent soul. Meng Hao felt the boundlessness of his late nascent soul stage base. In less than 200 years, he'd risen from an insignificant cultivator in Zhao to this moment. All his memories seemed like fantasy. His 5 elements nascent souls were assembled. The first step was complete. Now, the second step was about to be taken. That second step was combining the 5 elements. Once combined, he would be a 5-colored paragon. However, a flash of hesitation appeared in Meng Hao's eyes, and he frowned. The 13th level of chi condensation formed a great circle. My perfect foundation, my perfect gold core, my entire path, consisted of reaching the pinnacle of each stage. All of that made it so that I could exceed anyone else in the same stage. Therefore, I now have my 5 elements nascent souls. Nascent souls of the 5 elements in 5 colors can be broken down as follows. 3 elements are cracked, 4 elements are flawless, 5 elements are perfect. Logically speaking, I should be in the realm of perfection. Divine sense with a range of 27,000 meters seems to exceed other nascent soul eccentrics by far. However, I wonder what the true range of the divine sense of a perfect nascent soul really is. This was what was causing Meng Hao to hesitate. He looked at the 5 elements nascent souls, lost in thought. His 5 elements nascent souls made him both happy and thoughtful. Divine sense of 27,000 proved his path correct, yet seemed to differ from the legendary perfect nascent soul. Meng Hao didn't know exactly how powerful the legendary perfect nascent soul was, but considering he was familiar with the perfect foundation and perfect gold core, it was possible to come up with a general, theoretical answer to the question. A perfect nascent soul requires all of the 5 elements. The result is one nascent soul with 5 elements in 5 colors. I, however, chose to concoct 5 different nascent souls based off of the different totems. When I combine the 5 elements, I should be able to achieve a perfect nascent soul. However, I still have the feeling. I can't know for sure, but bet the true range of a perfect nascent soul is 29,999 meters. Meng Hao's eyes shone with a strange light. The method he had created to concoct a nascent soul became the path of the 5 elements nascent soul. This method did not become a new technique for creating a perfect nascent soul. Actually, it appeared to exceed that path. My divine sense has reached 27,000 meters after successfully producing the 5 elements nascent souls, which is still slightly less than a perfect nascent soul. Well then, I'll just have to add another nascent soul to close the gap. Meng Hao's eyes shone with determination as he sat there cross-legged on the seafloor. He lifted his right hand up, within which appeared, shockingly, a medicinal pill. This medicinal pill was something he had acquired from the bag of holding of the member of the Jai clan he had killed all those years ago. It was one of the 3 great medicinal pills, a 1-color soul procurement pill. 2. He acquired the 1-color soul procurement pill in chapter 323. This pill was incredibly rare, something miraculous from ancient times. After consuming it, there was a high likelihood to increase the quality of a nascent soul. By adding an extra color, it was like adding an extra level of power to the 5 elements. I already have all of the 5 elements. Perhaps consuming this pill will do nothing. On the other hand, perhaps a 6th element will appear that I'm unaware of. Meng Hao was silent for a moment before his expression filled with determination. He had to try at least once. Not trying wasn't an alternative he could accept. Without hesitation, he produced the copper mirror. He had a lot of spirit stones in his bag of holding, wealth he had accumulated over the years of leading the Crow divinity tribe. With no trace of irresoluteness, he duplicated the medicinal pills. It took a vast amount of spirit stones to produce only a single copy. Now he had 2 1-color soul procurement pills, one of which he immediately popped into his mouth. The moment it entered his mouth, a roaring filled his body. The medicinal pill dissolved, instantly transforming into something that seemed like a unique type of divine sense. It swept through him as if it were searching for something. Moments later, the power of the medicinal pill vanished along with that unique divine sense. Apparently it hadn't found what it was looking for. Meng Hao frowned and opened his eyes, lost in thought. The pill's ineffectiveness showed that his 5 elements really were of the Great Circle. There was no base for the pill to be able to randomly create a new element. The 3 great ancient miraculous pills couldn't possibly be so useless, could they? He thought. Disregarding the loss of spirit stones, he produced another duplicate and then consumed it. He experienced the same feeling as before, but in the end, nothing happened. However, the power of the bizarre divine sense seemed to overlap with the power from before, making it even more powerful. He consumed a 3rd pill, determined to try at least 10 before giving up. His belief that 27,000-meter divine sense differed from a perfect nascent soul was just a guess, but he would test it. He continued consuming the pills. After consuming the 9th pill, the strange divine sense once again appeared. It was at this point that Meng Hao suddenly felt a stab of pain on his forehead. The pain came suddenly, as if it had been hiding within his body all along, undetectable. After consuming the 9th 1-color soul procurement pill, the overlapping layers of fearsome divine sense were finally able to detect it. When the stab of pain appeared, Meng Hao's mind trembled. As soon as he felt the pain, he immediately duplicated another 1-color soul procurement pill. Even in ancient times, few people would ever have been able to possess so many of these kind of medicinal pills. In fact, throughout history down until this day, no one ever had. Only Meng Hao would be able to consume them in such a manner. Of course, it also indicated that his accumulation of spirit stones in his bag of holding was rapidly growing smaller and smaller. It wouldn't be long before Meng Hao was flat broke. Although that pained Meng Hao, he didn't care too much. The pain he felt in his forehead gave him hope that the one-color soul procurement pill had found the traces of the sixth element it was looking for. The instant in which he consumed the 10th one-color soul procurement pill, the combined power all 10 pills congealed into a terrifying divine sense. It swept throughout Meng Hao's body until finally, it found the power of a sixth element that it needed, right there on his forehead. Meng Hao's own divine sense focused on the same spot where the power of the one-color soul procurement pills was focused. A rumbling sound filled Meng Hao's mind. What he was looking at was none other than a rock. Perhaps it was more correct to say that it was a strand of wind, a wind shaped like a rock, white in color, clearly visible within Meng Hao's divine sense. Suddenly, he thought back to what happened that year outside of the rebirth cave in the southern domain. A woman in the rebirth cave had given Meng Hao the power of a rock. 3. Meng Hao was given the power of the rock in chapter 313. After that, Meng Hao had never been able to find that bit of rock power, no matter how he checked. But now, under the overlapping power of 10 one-color soul procurement pills, the wind of the rock suddenly was revealed. This rock wind is my wind-type totem. It will be my sixth nascent soul, the wind nascent soul. He instantly rotated his cultivation base. The 5 nascent souls rotating around his head began to perform incantation gestures. Fueled by the power of the 5 elements, Meng Hao's body became the pill furnace as he suddenly began to concoct a nascent soul. The chi vortex formed from his perfect gold core swirled rapidly and began to emit a gravitational force. Along with the power of the soul procurement pill and the conjuring power of the 5 elements nascent souls, the power of the rock in Meng Hao's forehead, the power that had been concealed there for years and years, was finally forced out and sucked toward his Danshan region. The moment the rock wind entered his Danshan, a rumbling roar filled Meng Hao's body. The chi vortex there roared as it spun faster and faster. Time to concoct my wind nascent soul. Meng Hao's eyes snapped open. A pounding sound filled his body as the chi vortex suddenly shrunk down on itself and transformed in a white, 7-inch tall person. It looked exactly like Meng Hao. This was Meng Hao's 6th nascent soul, wind nascent soul. As soon as it appeared, Meng Hao's cultivation base suddenly rocketed up, pushing him from the late nascent soul stage higher and higher until he was now at the peak of the stage. His distance from the great circle was only a single step. At the same time, Meng Hao's divine sense expanded madly. 27,300 meters, 27,900 meters, 28,000 meters. Finally, when it reached 29,700 meters, it began to slow down. Eventually, it stopped at 29,999 meters. Meng Hao lifted his head and stood. As he rose to his feet, the wind nascent soul emerged from the top of his head to join the other nascent souls. Light shone out from them to form a star with 6 points. Perfect nascent soul. Meng Hao was bursting with excitement at creating his own perfect nascent soul path, the first person ever to combine 6 nascent souls. Yet his face suddenly flickered. It was at this point that suddenly, the effects of time within his body were multiplied by 6. Time disappeared, causing his longevity to rapidly disappear. He suddenly realized that his longevity would run out in only 100 years. A bright glow began to shine in his eyes. Because I have 6 nascent souls, it's like I have 6 lives, 6 animas. Therefore, my longevity must be divided into 6 parts. As such, 1 year for me is like 6 years. That is the price of the perfect nascent soul. It was also at this same moment that the resurrection lily inside of Meng Hao seemed to think that now was the perfect opportunity to make a move. It suddenly rose up with unyielding explosiveness. This chapter was sponsored by Sophocles Skortsanida. A relatively lengthy explanation is needed here. Zhen uses ancient Chinese measurements that you have probably read about in other translations. He uses zhang, which is about 3.3 meters, and li, which is half a kilometer. I convert these units to meters and kilometers, and then round them to the nearest appropriate unit to make the distances easier to picture. I know that some of the ancient Chinese flavor is lost because of that, but honestly speaking, I think it leads to a better, smoother, and faster reading experience. In this particular passage, Jen actually switches between the two, and also switches between talking about distance and what is essentially the area of a circle. He actually describes the area of Meng Hao's divine sense, based on the range of 9,000 zhang, as being 70 li, assumably 70 square li. Honestly, the math is confusing, especially when you throw in the vagueness of Chinese and then the conversion between the two units. I know there may be some discrepancies with previous descriptions of the range of spiritual sense. That may have to do with the fact that the word Jen used for area is kind of vague and could be interpreted in different ways. Later, I will go back to check the raws and clarify those areas. The clouds above the violet sea churned. Dark and overcast, they suddenly erupted with approaching lightning bolts. Tribulation clouds roiled into being as the lightning neared, whipping the violet sea into a frenzy. A massive death aura emanated from it, seeming to prepare for battle. Archaic madness began to rise. The cultivators in the 10 outposts that had been built up over the past years all looked up into the sky with expressions of astonishment. Is that tribulation lightning? Don't tell me someone is transcending tribulation. How could that be possible? Only immortals can transcend tribulation. How could there be someone in the great western desert who could transcend tribulation? This isn't someone transcending tribulation. Obviously, a precious treasure is appearing in the world. Such scenes played out in all of the 10 outposts. However, the tribulation lightning over the Violet Sea was actually only detectable by the people actually in the area of the Violet Sea. Cultivators in the Black Land seemed to be cut off and unable to detect it, even spirit-severing cultivators. It was at this moment that in the second outpost, inside of a lofty building, a bare-chested, middle-aged man was embracing a beautiful female cultivator. As they chatted and laughed, he occasionally caressed her body with his hands. Her coy reaction caused his desire to grow stronger and stronger. Behind him, 7 old men sat cross-legged, eyes closed, ignoring the obscene sounds. 4 were mid-nascent soul, 2 late-nascent soul, 1 at the great circle, the most powerful below spirit-severing. Such cultivators could shake the world. Right now, though, it was clear that these 7 men were nothing more than a retinue. Only a spirit-severing patriarch could command such retinue, yet the man was only early nascent soul, meaning his status was shockingly high. This man was the son of spirit-severing patriarch Huyan Yunaming of the Heavenly Pursuit tribe, one of the 3 powers of the Heavenly Court Alliance. Huyan Qing. He had left the Black Lands 3 months ago to go sightseeing in the 10 outposts and chase after women. Just as Huyan Qing was about to throw himself on the female cultivator, a bolt of red lightning suddenly shot through the air and then headed off into the distance. Before it disappeared, an enormous, intense pressure could be felt. Instantly, the 7 old men all opened their eyes. The red-robed old man of the great circle of the nascent soul stage slowly lifted his head and looked off into the distance, frowning. A tremor ran through Huyan Qing, and he suddenly looked up. Miracle lightning. Don't tell me some precious treasure has suddenly appeared, or maybe some neo-demon is transforming. Huyan Qing laughed heartily. Suddenly, he leaped up into the air, holding the shocked woman in one arm as he flicked his sleeve with the other. Instantly, 4 black-robed bodyguards appeared bearing a luxurious sedan chair on their shoulders. Huyan Qing immediately entered the sedan chair, taking the woman with him. Sir Wu, let's go take a look, all right. His laughter mixed with the gasp of the female cultivator as she saw the sumptuous interior of the sedan chair. The man who Huyan Qing referred to as Sir Wu was the old man of the great circle of the nascent soul stage. He frowned and let out a quiet sigh. Slowly, he stood up and, along with the other 6 old men, escorted the sedan chair off. Huyan Qing's procession headed off in the direction the lightning had flown, which was of course the location where Meng Hao stood at the bottom of the sea. Currently, Meng Hao's expression was grim as he looked at the 6 nascent souls flying around the level of his head. He frowned. Longevity of 100 years. Not even 200. Well, I'm already at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. I guess I have to reach spirit severing within 100 years. Now, as for this resurrection lily. A cold smile suddenly twisted his lips. He had long since predicted that the resurrection lily would not let a crucial moment in his cultivation pass without trying to make a move. He knew that it would appear. Originally, he thought it would attempt to possess him when the heavenly tribulation hit. However, apparently it thought right now was the best opportunity. For you to appear right now is actually quite convenient. If heavenly tribulation really does come, you could cause me quite a bit of frustration. Smiling coldly, he sat down cross-legged. Ignoring the resurrection lily's explosive rise, he lifted his hand and pointed at one of the nascent souls. Immediately, the metal nascent soul floated down. Its face was covered with a cold smile just like Meng Hao's as it sank down into the top of his head. It sank down to appear in the empty space in his Danshan region that his gold core had previously occupied. This time, I'll give you a chance to have a full-on fight. As Meng Hao closed his eyes, majestic cultivation base power exploded out from the metal nascent soul to crush down onto the resurrection lily. The resurrection lily seemed to go mad, and it let out a soundless roar. Shockingly, directly behind Meng Hao appeared the image of a blindingly bright four-colored resurrection lily, swaying back and forth ferociously. It was in this moment that the resurrection lily seized control of Meng Hao's legs. Meng Hao lost all feeling in them as the struggle for control over his body erupted. The feeling quickly spread into his arms. The four-colored resurrection lily swayed back and forth in a very bizarre fashion. It seemed as if it had been preparing for many years to make this counterattack against Meng Hao. When it made its move, it would attack with complete ruthlessness. "I have to give you some credit," said Meng Hao coolly. "You're much better this time than you were before." After all this time, he was very familiar with the resurrection lily and knew that it was sentient. Even as he spoke, the wood nascent soul began to emanate a green light as it sank into the top of Meng Hao's head. It quickly reached his Danshan region, whereupon Meng Hao unhesitatingly superimposed it over the metal nascent soul. The two combined into one. As soon as the two nascent souls combined into one, a roaring sound filled Meng Hao's mind. He instantly felt his cultivation base rising up rapidly. He was still in the late nascent soul stage. Despite not having made a breakthrough, he could sense that his battle prowess had exploded upward by double or more. At the moment, Meng Hao wasn't surprised. That was because this was the power of a perfect nascent soul, a power that placed him above anyone else in the same stage. However, in unison with his sudden increase in battle prowess, Meng Hao could tell that the corrosive effect on his longevity, which previously was limited to a multiple of 6, was now even greater. The resurrection lily let out another soundless roar as its struggling increased in intensity. Whereas before, it had occupied a position of incredible superiority, it was now forced to defend relentlessly against Meng Hao. It did not want to allow Meng Hao to retake the parts of his body that it had already possessed. "This is merely a combination of two nascent souls," said Meng Hao, his eyes glittering. Suddenly, the water nascent soul floated down, emanating a red glow as it sank into the top of his head. Moments later, it appeared in his Danshan region where it superimposed over the metal and wood nascent souls. They fused together, three nascent souls combining into one. BOMMM. Meng Hao could clearly sense his battle prowess climbing up with incredible intensity, from the foundation of the early combination of two nascent souls. Originally, he had possessed the power equivalent to only a single nascent soul. As of this moment, though, his power was equivalent to 4 peak late-stage nascent souls. In addition, the wasting away of his longevity was also increased. This was not an increase in cultivation base, but rather battle prowess. It was natural strength, arisen from the ability to use spiritual power. Like water forced into a bottle, more power without increasing capacity, creating overwhelming pressure. The resurrection lily was emitting a piercing howl. The sound of it could not be heard by any outsider, only Meng Hao, who could hear it quite clearly. The resurrection lily was completely incapable of standing up to the power of Meng Hao's 3 combined elements. It instantly lost control of Meng Hao's arms, and was forced to retreat back to its position within Meng Hao's possessed legs. "I don't need to expend much effort to suppress you," said Meng Hao coolly. "After all, this is a direct conflict, and you aren't even close to being a match for me. What makes you think you're qualified to even try to possess me? You are me, but I'm not you." A sea of flames erupted from the fire nascent soul as it floated down and merged into his body. It then appeared in his Danshan region, where it overlapped and then combined with the metal, wood, and water nascent souls. Shocking rumbling sounds caused Meng Hao's entire body to shake. Blue veins popped up all over as blood rushed through them at high speed. His body suddenly began to expand. It appeared as if he were taller. Although he was still slender, it seemed as if every bit of his flesh and blood was virtually bursting with terrifying power. His battle prowess doubled again. In this moment, he now possessed the same power as 8 nascent souls at the peak of the late stage. The power of 4 combined elements exploded out, causing the resurrection lily to writhe and let out a miserable shriek. It was easily pushed back once again by suppressive power, losing control over Meng Hao's legs and being forced into his most remote extremities. However, even in the moment in which it retreated back as far as it could, an aura rose up from the resurrection lily that caused Meng Hao's pupils to constrict. The aura grew more and more powerful, and even seemed to contain some remnants of the one-color soul procurement pill. Suddenly, the four-colored resurrection lily which Meng Hao had suppressed to the limit began to glow, and then develop. A fifth color. When the fifth color appeared, Meng Hao's mind and heart trembled, but then his eyes glowed with pleasant surprise. He knew that this resurrection lily was incomplete and could never grow to the point where it could bloom with 7 colors and reach immortal ascension. 3 colors was its limit. It had acquired 4 colors by means of a miracle, but now, it actually developed a 5th color. 1. The resurrection lily got its 4th color in chapter 205. This 5th color obviously had something to do with Meng Hao's nascent soul concocting and the one-color soul procurement pill, as well as his place in the realm of perfection. Because of all of these different things, the resurrection lily was suddenly able to make a meteoric rise. When the 5th flower petal appeared on the resurrection lily, it let out a fierce howl and then erupted out from its position of retreat. It expanded out, clearly wanting to take control of Meng Hao's entire body in possession. It wanted to control Meng Hao and make him a true host that it could control. Meng Hao could feel the madness of the resurrection lily, and it caused him to smile. He wanted it to grow more powerful, because he had long since decided to use this resurrection lily at the critical moment when his time came in the future to reach immortal ascension. Even as the resurrection lily exploded out with power, Meng Hao lifted his head up. The earth-nascent soul suddenly erupted with shocking coldness. It merged in through Meng Hao's forehead, appearing moments later in his Danshan region. 5 elements overlapped. 5 elements combined. Chapter 524, 5-Colored Resurrection Lily. Huyan Yunming's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Chinese letter Chinese letter Chinese letter Huyan Yun Ming. Huyan is a surname. Yun means cloud. Ming means carve or inscription. Huyan Qing's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Chinese letter Chinese letter Haiyan King. Qing means celebrate.